as heritage implies social, cultural, and political affairs that concern all of us. So now just let me explain you briefly the structure of this session, because we have 3 hours to be together with you, and it will be organized in 3 phases. First, we will start by listening to the presentation of Miralda and Davide Rapp, and then in a second round, we will listen to our guests Lionel Devlieger and Curro Claret, and the third moment, there will be a debate between these 4 guests and 3 local architects that at the moment are involved in the revision of the Heritage Plan of Barcelona. They are Laia Grau, Gemma, Serch, and Alessandro, Scarnato. Then the public also can participate in this final debate, sending their questions via YouTube, and we will incorporate the questions to our guests. Okay, so we can start. Then I think I'm receiving some messages. I think everything is working okay. Let me see. Okay. I think, Mario, are you there? Okay, I think there's not a problem. So let's start with the first guest. It's Antoni Miralda. Miralda, I introduce you briefly, is a multidisciplinary artist that has investigated the art of food for more than 4 decades, using a vibrant and inclusive language based on the celebration of all senses. Having experience with photography, video, sculpture, collages, objects, and monuments, his work is always rooted in its social context. Miranda has lived and practiced in different cities. He was in the 60s in Paris. In the early 70s, he moves to New York. And since then, he has lived between the States and Europe, creating public art and installations. Miranda has received numerous awards. Among them, I will just mention a recent one, the prestigious Velázquez Prize. In the mid-80s, Miranda, with chef Montse Guillen, created in New York the acclaimed El Internacional, a tapas bar and restaurant. And this afternoon, we have the opportunity to listen to Miralda to talk about this project. Miralda, you can switch on your microphone.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hello, good. So, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much, Eva, for introducing, and what a great team we have here. I just would like to try to introduce some part of this project of the restaurant, El Internacional, the tapas bar and restaurant. Usually when we talk about this, about El Internacional, we talk about the place, I mean, the entrance, the flag entrance, the open kitchen, the 4 dining rooms, the video menu. I mean, but I would like to talk about a few details, like objects, like kind of a little bit haunted objects. They were there, and they were also for me very important because they were very much part of this second-hand kind of metaphor and concept of for sure. So anyway, I would like to try to connect myself to the image if I can do it. Will take a few, I hope, more seconds and minutes. Let me just see. I think we need to, because now I see you, Eva, I need to,
Yeah.
You need to be, 1 second, I cannot,
Okay.
I cannot share with you in the image here. So I don't know if there's a one way, then you need to pass the image to me. It doesn't work. Just 1 second. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm getting there for sure. Okay.
It's coming. It's not because Mario.
It's coming soon. It's coming soon.
Okay.
It's coming soon.
Yes, something moving here.
Do you see something with me?
We see ourselves.
No, sir. 1 second. 1 second. Just 1 second, because now I need to. Okay, I'm going back to here. No, it doesn't work.
Okay, we have it now.
Yes.
Perfect.
Do you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you. Took a little time. Okay, so anyway, those pages, you saw the drawing, is a drawing on the left side and a photo on the right. Do you see it well?
Yes, I can see the asphalt.
Okay, perfect. So this is, I'm going to show some pages of a book. It's like an artist book, but more than artist book is an insurance book. It's a book that I did. I never showed it before, so I'm very nervous about that because nobody knew about that. That was like the haunted book, and it was not part of the publication we did about the International. And I'm sure Eva and Ricardo, you don't know about that. So this is like the insurance book. And I had a certain point we had to insure the whole piece because we had to say, well, this has a value. I mean, it's not only a restaurant, it's a piece of art, whatever you see inside, outside, it has a value. So we put on I did this sort of a sketch artist book, and I put a price, a name, and a date, and a price to everything. Then it was on the restaurant. So this is the old Coke can mosaic. So the idea of creating a mosaic made of cans came out of my experience, my experience, the time that I was living in that area, and the fact that it was a very sort of gray concrete landscape, large streets. I'm talking about West Broadway, New York, Manhattan, 1980s when I arrived there. I arrived in the 70s, but whatever. It was all kind of flat jewels, flat shiny pieces incrustated in the concrete. And I thought that it was quite interesting because they were like fossils. So I was keeping those pieces, those cans, flat cans from different origins. Most of them are Coca-Cola, of course, because we're talking about a Coca-Cola country, 100%. So my idea of this, creating that terrace outside of the restaurant, it was to do those sort of perspective, fake perspective, and cover with those wonderful cans that I was finding around the area. The trucks were, still going on by that time. At the end of the restaurant in 1986, there were no more trucks. And now you ask to anyone in Tribeca, what is a truck then? They never saw one truck. It's like the whole place had changed. So anyway, let me show you some of those, what I call the jewelry. So by that time, actually, my idea was to do it all with Coca-Cola, to do like a Coca-Cola mosaic. But I couldn't do it because this was the time that Coca-Cola had the bad idea of creating the classic Coca-Cola. And the classic was like a brand. This happened exactly at the end of the 84, when I would start to do the terrace. The restaurant opened in September, and 2-3 months after, we did step by step, we did the terrace. So anyway, I was trying to catch all those Coca-Cola cans, flat, around the area, but there was no more because the change of the Coca-Cola to Coca-Cola Classic was a little more sweet. So many people hated and was many protests, was nearly a mob in the street. So people don't want more the Coca-Cola Classic, whatever. So I had to share with some other cans and some other sodas. They're all beautiful, so it was okay for me. Let me show you a few ones. So of course, each one has a flavor, has a logo, has a message, has a color, has a colonial connection, whatever. The classical club soda. So let's move on another object, still outside, close to the mosaic tiles. I mean, the tile cans, the can tiles. And this is how you call it, a kidney. The kidney table that I found in the second floor of the building when we came in. So actually the piece is called Teddy's Kidney Light Table, because the table was transformed as a light table. I changed, I use the frame, I keep the frame of the kidney shape and use a new, I did a new material, base material, and what I incrusted, I mean, I collaged different pictures. Then there has to do about, the people who were in the restaurant before us. So when was Teddy's. So here we have some beauty from the 50s and 60s dinners. We have a Liz Taylor with two husbands. One here, that's Eddie Fisher, of course, and Richard Burton. We have another one, of course, Jane Fonda, wonderful, next to Capuchin. Oh yes, this is the comedian who had the Tonight Show, Carson, excuse me. Sophia Loren, whatever, Kirk Douglas, and whatever. So the idea was to have those sort of historical steps together, like this kind of memories all together in this kidney that the people could step on. So you see somebody who's coming in. So this was just a kind of entrance, and of course was lit. It has a light behind on the night. So it was quite interesting. And every photograph, every document that I found in the archives, I'll tell you another time, this is a long history, I find on the archive of the owner and some other places. So every photo was signed by, was a fake sign, because I did myself the sign, of course, but by all the VIPs, all the big ones. He's doing some exercise on Eddie Fisher and Liz Taylor, whatever. So let's just move on the next picture. And this is more than an object. I mean, it was a big object, if I can say it. It's like I work on the facade. The facade from the 50s, we have it on the left side, there's 5 windows. The classic 50s sign, the Teddy sign with neon behind. It was wonderful. The canopy, the windows. So when we got the restaurant with Monse Guillen, my partner, so it was already, the whole thing was covered. The whole wonderful facade was covered with, you don't see too much here, with sort of fake 70s. This was the very earlier, later 70s, earlier 80s, with sort of fake stone. And you don't see all the windows, whatever, everything was flat, was a kind of camouflage. So what I did is I sort of got to this, the pattern of these stones, of these fake stones. You don't see too much here, the pattern. And I blow up it, and with the negative, so, and sort of camouflage the whole facade on this black and white pattern, kind of camouflating the whole facade. Okay, so of course also the sign, keeping the apostrophe that was becoming after kind of the main connection of the whole, of the whole Dalmatian image that we gave with this facade. Let's go inside. This is in the first floor, the sentimental room, called also Teddy's sentimental room, because here we had many documents, all those documents, and I told you we found as a vitrine, as a display, as videos, sound, an editing sound. And actually, I want to talk about the tete-a-tete table, who, April 85, it has a value of 20,000. We never sold that, but I mean, this, for the insurance, that was very important, whatever. So this table was a kind of long table, and the tete-a-tete was created. I think it's very difficult to see it in the photo. There is one head here, it's a toreador head, bullfighter head, and there's another one here. We'll see in the next picture. And also it's a fountain. It's a fountain of wine. On top is a porron. I guess everyone knows a porron, I imagine. If not, you should. Absolutely. And objects, as I said, on Sentimental Museum were there. The lamps were switched on in that way, of the size, to create that kind of sense of moving or rotating. And this was the cosmos, the Mappa Mundi, made of mirrors, like a disco ball that was turning all the time, creating a kind of memory sickness, seasickness kind of effect. And if we move on, these are the bullfighters. Yeah, I mean the lights. Just I recycle some decorative statues, and I find in a flea market, whatever, and it was transformed. But I was studying a little bit if it's not going to be, if I should really keep as a bullfighter, or I should change the head. So you see on the left side some sketches, because first I thought perhaps it should be a Guardia Civil. You see the unicorn, the head here. I don't know if you're familiar with that kind of a Spanish icon, a symbolic icon. I mean, those pieces are all part of this, I think, this concept of secondhand, of finding a piece, transforming, getting some input, changing, and at the very end, you're totally surprised, of course, because you get a completely another message. This is exactly what I'm saying. This is it's called the Restrooms Hand Dryer Monument. And it's the hand dryer that I found in the original bathrooms. I mean, I think probably if you read this incredible article at your magazine, you'll see the bathrooms were quite places where people stayed a long time, there was sound, there were kind of atmosphere, it was like chill out bathrooms, if I can say. So anyway, that was the kind of little piece then I found, and then I connected to this idea of a monument with a large screen changing images, the top smelling fresh flowers, the sound coming from both sides, plus the sound of the hand dryer, the automatic hand dryer. And of course, this kind of, I don't know, cenotaph, more funerary or movie or parking kind of movie house or whatever, kind of creation from this idea. Let's move on to the next one. Again, those were the lamps, the objects were the lamps, then were part of the second floor of the restaurant. In fact, there were two pieces put together. One was enlarged and the crab hands, and the other one I found it also sitting in some place in the same, in the terrace in the restaurant, the old restaurant. I call the first one, we call the crab lamps, and after the final name of the piece is the Lobster Dream. And it has, the photo is not very good. Sorry, I mean, you know, this is very much a scratch. Artist book is not for be published. But, you know, I'm happy to share all these secrets with you all. So you see on the photocopy how the drawing of the room and the different lamps. And it was interesting because it was a kind of a sort of way those arms, those lobster fingers come, you know, like utensils, and they were sort of way animated, if I can say, depending also on the light and also how, you know, how much you've been involved in the Porron and Olympics, and, you know, on the Margarita Blue, who was our special drink at the bar. So, you know, everything helps, of course, in a restaurant. Restaurant is, you know, it's like a sandwich with many layers. You know, you get the atmosphere, the feeling, the people for sure, the food's coming, you know, the newspaper you read, the menu, the information you get from the menu, you know, the feedback, you know, the talk, the dialogue with the other ones, the tour of the restaurants, the objects, you know, it's like a kind of many. It's not just now we just watching these objects completely out of the context. It's a little difficult to imagine. But I mean, I guess, you know, you should read the section second hand of the magazine, and you'll see many good things over there, and a lot of information. Let's see, there is a box, then, a vitrine that was for me quite important, because from there was coming the wine. So we sort of keep here symbolically, because actually the white is not ice, it's just salt. We had like keep it in the salt to keep it forever, you know, like a dry salted wine bar. The bottles had to do all about, you can see on the photos, but, you know, a little bit of imagination, please. All the levels, they're all religious. So I keep here, I'm very also interested about popular iconography coming from these religions icons. So there's a lot of wines, especially German wines, and many other places with names and labels with saints and saints and holiness, whatever. So we had this kind of a little bit magic vitrine. The boom, the radio was all covered with shells, the magic shells, the one that you use in Santeria, and you use for good luck and then the different religious ceremonies. On top was one of these great silhouette, Ogun. This is a god, but this is Haiti, from Haiti, so this is more voodoo, but it comes also connected with the Santeria. And I'm not sure about if I have a picture of what is on top, but let me explain you a little bit. It's a coffee espresso machine, and it was all sort of converted, like also kind of another monument. So it was more like a crematorium, you know. On top was this wall, the atlas, totally black, and on top was an eagle, and here we have this, you know, the Italian classical machine. So it was kind of a monumental recycle, and certain point, like a crown of that place too was. And actually, I didn't tell you about the title, of course, I'm sorry about that. Yes, that's very important. Yeah, The Temptation of St. Anthony. So again, there's some references. I don't know, how much we want to get to these references or how close, but yes, I'm sure he was very, very, he had a sense of eating and drinking St. Anthony, I'm sure. And of course, being there, surrounded by the smells, by the hundreds of tapas going up and down the floors, by those wines with all these signs. So this was kind of a working idea for this illuminating, with the antenne, we illuminating, the St. Anthony's temptations. And of course, please, the Perron. Never forget about the Perron, never, please. So let's see if there's anything else here. I think so. Oh, it doesn't look, Well, but I'm strange because I'm missing something. Anyway, let me go through. Oh, yes, of course, the crown, yes. Well, yes, the crown was quite amazing for me to get to this message. By that time I was working very involved already with a project called Honeymoon. The Honeymoon was a sort of imaginary love affair between two monuments, a monument representing the freedom, the Statue of Liberty in New York, in the harbor in New York, another one representing or symbolizing the conquest, and this one set in Barcelona harbor. So when I find out there was a love affair between them, etc., etc. So I'm not getting to that project because I don't think it's too much in the second hand. It's more third hand, fourth hand. And so let's getting to the idea of the crown. By that time, when we built an International, 3 months of the summer 1984, in West Broadway and Lower Manhattan, the Statue of Liberty started to be covered because they were preparing the big celebrations of the 200 years, and it was like the centennial, the double centennial, whatever. It was like a big deal. So anyway, people couldn't see more the Statue of Liberty. It was totally covered on the, a kind of ghosty structure in the harbor. So anyway, I thought that would be a good idea, since we had this wonderful flat roof, and then to build a crown, an exactly size crown on top of the restaurant. So I started to work on the crown. All this to tell you, then I was very kind of excited and stimulated, and I don't know if I can say obsessed by the spikes, the pikes of the crown, and this kind of waiting for you don't know what, kind of violence, but at the same time, it's like a sign, a hand, some whatever. It has some probably many interpretations. So I start to build with this idea a model, like a maquette of the brochette, the Liberty Crown brochette. And you cannot see very well in this picture. So this is the outside window of l'International. We had two windows. One window was totally open to participation. It's changing every 3 or 4 months, different artists. And that one was more like a static, was like the home window that said, here we had peace, and then they stay there a few months. So anyway, it was like why we don't do this kind of brochette? Why the crown should be, I mean, why Liberty should wear that crown, you know, always the same. I mean, let's try to animate that. So this was my idea. So there's lights behind, but I don't know, the photo, the Polaroid, might tell you then all those are these old Polaroids. For this, the quality is so wonderful. You know, you cannot see, but I did some other projects after that. You know, this is like a recent, a more recent drawing of those pikes turned as brochettes. The foods had to do about this exchange of food between new world, old worlds. The old foods who came after Columbus or starting Columbus. Columbus brought the potatoes and the red potatoes, the boniatos, the sweet potatoes. In the second trip, whatever, third trip, in the ananas, the maize, of course, the green peppers, or whatever. We're talking about dialogue, a change, about, you know, how the diets were transformed, how the diets of the world. So anyway, it was also many foods who came from the new to the world, but this was the idea, to have her crown, her diadem with those foods. And let me show you, just to finish, an interpretation that I did when we present l'Internacional, the project in Buenos Aires, in the Faena Art Center, a few years ago with Montse Guillén. And I had the idea of to make finally that crown the right size, because the crown on top of the roof, it was not the brochette crown. I think I talked to the engineer, and they said, you know, the wind and the weather and the security and the lights and the birds and whatever, you know, not put food on top of the roof of a building. So anyway, this is a little bit first-hand more than second-hand kind of realization of this dream of the brochette crown. And that's it.
Great. Thank you very much, Miranda, for the tour around the International.
Good. So let me just turn off my good.
Okay. Yes, while you change the screen, then you will have as a couple, as a duo this afternoon, Davide Rapp, Davide is an architect and video artist. He studied in the Politecnico di Milano and has a PhD from the same university. And Davide is founder and creative director of the creative agency based in Milano, Orama. He works across the field of architecture and cinema, producing mixed media, installation, movie montages, and video essays. In 2014, he participated in the 14th Venice Biennale of Architecture, created by Rem Koolhaas, where Davide showed a 32 minutes long montage of short architectural clips, specifically conceived for this exhibition. Probably some of you will remember this hypnotic huge screen that was at the entrance of the International Pavilion in the Biennale. It was impossible to miss and to escape from its magic. And Davide was the author, and since then Davide has kept the collaboration with Rem Koolhaas. His movie montages and video essays have been exhibited and screened in many international movie festivals and biennales, and he has also been published in different international magazines such as Cahiers du Cinéma or Architectural Review. Davide is also involved in academics. He teaches regularly at Politecnico di Milano and University of Genova, and he has lectured in several universities in Italy and around. And Davide, we're looking forward.
Hi, hello everybody. Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be here with you, and I'd like to say thank you to Miralda because it was amazing, very interesting and funny, and can't wait to discuss about it later. So I will share my screen. Okay. Are you able to read the title?
Yes.
Yes, Davide.
Okay, great. Let's get started. Okay, so as the title of this conversation is secondhand, I would like to show you 3 different works that I did in the past years. I would say since 2014, when I changed my professional life and I started working as a video maker and as a video artist. And so, well, if I have to think about something related with this idea of second-hand, according to the history of cinema, probably the most easy thing to say is to tell the story, to refer to the idea of the remakes. As you know, in the past 100 years, Hollywood, but also in abroad in other countries, all the people that work inside the world of the cinema, they always love to remake movies. As you see, remake is, according to the American Heritage Dictionary, the definition says that remake is a verb. It means to make again or anew, and the act of remaking or doing something in remade form, especially a new version of an early movie or a song. So this idea, it's interesting to me. I love remakes. I have to say, most of people hate remakes, but I have to say that I love them because for me, remaking movies gives the possibility to learn something about something that was done before by other directors, of course, but also gives the possibility to add something new. Sometimes this doesn't work, and everybody probably can list at least 2 or 3 or more bad remakes, but sometimes it works and it makes sense. So the first video, the first thing that I would like to show is related with this idea of remaking movies in order to produce something new, something that wasn't already in the original version. For example, Alfred Hitchcock in 1934 released these very well-known movies that was titled The Man Who Knew Too Much. At the time, he was directing his movies in the United Kingdom, and well, it was a good commercial success. But then when in the 50s, he went to Los Angeles and he started working as a director in Hollywood, he had the chance to remake it, to do a new version of this film. And in 1956, he released another version of the same movie that was titled The Man Who Knew Too Much as well. The story was more or less the same, while the location were different because the first one was in Switzerland, while the second one was in the UK as well. But what is interesting is that there is this the same director that wants to do the same movie twice. So in the past, I would say 3 or 4 years ago, I decided to study this idea of remaking movies and trying to compare different versions of the same story, different versions of the same film. In a 3 minutes long video that I'm going to show right now, you will see some samples of this idea. It will start with a comparison between 2 different movies made by the same director. It means the 2 different versions of the same film, that is Funny Games. And you will see that more or less the director decided to record it in the same way, after 10 years. And the only difference is that he changed the cast, he changed the main characters, the main actors, I will say. And so it's the same film, but it has a different meaning. I don't know, I can't say what is this meaning, what is the difference between the 2, but you will see that also in terms of interior design, interior space, the color of the image and the way the camera record the space is a little bit different. It looks similar, but it's different. Then you will see another funny remake, because in 1973, The Exorcist was released in the United States. It was a success worldwide. But 1 year later in Turkey, they didn't have the chance to screen The Exorcist movie. And so they decided to remake it, to make their own version of this film. And you will see an interesting scene in which you can compare on one side, The Exorcist, The Exorcist speaking with the the girl. On the other side, the same happening in the Turkish version. And you will see, for example, that in the original version, you have the cross, for example, the Bible, while in the second one, you have the Quran, and everything is related to Muslim and another religion. So it's interesting to see two different religions all together in order to fight the evil. While the third and last short video that you will see is related with Psycho. So we go back to Alfred Hitchcock. In 1960, Hitchcock released this very famous thriller. And in 1998, Gus Van Sant decided to remake it and to make it as it is, shot for shot. The only main difference is that the Gus Van Sant version is a full color version. And we will see that he tried to update a little bit the very famous Bates Motel, just adding some images and changing a few details. We don't know why he did it, but I think that the result is very interesting, but because it probably reveals that Gus Van Sant loved so much this movie that he wanted to study and to remake it as it is in order to understand it more and more. So I would like to play the first video that is called Seeing Double, if Mario can start it.
Stundenkilometern. Oft liegt eine Strecke von mehr als 10.000 Kilometern. Ja, beim Anbremsen. Ohne Bremseinwirkung, beim Anbremsen.
Bu sefer mutlaka kaybedeceksin.
Kes sesini alçak şeytan, düzenbaz, lanetli yaratık!
Bates?
Okay, so I think that the video finished. So what we have watched, there were 3 short clips taken from a series of 12 different videos that I did, trying to compare different movies. And I think that remaking, according to the history of cinema, is something that can fit with this idea of second-hand, of taking the material from someone else, from the past, and try to read it, understand it, and changing it, maybe adding a few things or completely changing it. Then I will try to speak about this found footage architecture title. That was the title of the article that I wrote for the IQD magazine in collaboration with Eva and Riccardo. And well, found footage is, again, according to the history of cinema, a way to produce movies, to produce a video using footage that is already there, something that is already there. You only have to find something, a video that you can use, a film, something now that you can download from internet because some user have uploaded some scenes from his life and so on, and then try to put them all together with the editing process and produce something new. So according to Wikipedia, in filmmaking, found footage is the use of footage as a found object appropriated for using collage films, documentary films, mockumentary films, and other works. Well, the first time that I understood that this idea of collage films was actually a possibility was when I had the chance to watch this film from the 60s. It was delivered in 1964, that was called Verifica Incerta. The director of this film were Baruchello and Griffi, and they delivered a half-an-hour-long film in 1964 in which they edited all together a lot of scenes taken from very bad film that they found somewhere. Those films were supposed to be destroyed, and they decided to maintain them, to cut them in a very interesting way and produce something new. In this film, that it's an half an hour long, as I said, and you can easily find it online if you want to check it. There is a scene that is very interesting, a 3 minutes long scene in which you can see a huge amount of doors and windows opening and closing with many different actors doing that. You can also see in this image that there is Gregory Peck opening one of those doors. Well, this scene was very interesting for me. It meant a lot. And then later I had the chance to, I would say, remake this in my very first project that was, as Eva said before, Elements, the video that I did for the Venice Biennale of Architecture. So in this definition, we speak about collage films, and collage is this artistic composition of materials and objects pasted over a surface, often with unifying lines and color, but as you can see, is also an assemblage of diverse elements. And Elements is the title of the film that I did for the Fundamentals Biennale curated by Rem Koolhaas in 2014 for the exhibition Elements of Architecture. This is the facade of the Central Pavilion in the Giardini in Venice. It's interesting because here you can read more or less the same way to work with a facade that we saw before, thanks to Miralda, in which you can add, for example, the title of an exhibition, Elements of Architecture, on the facade of an existing building without removing La Biennale, and then the layering of the two different texts makes sense and produce something. Well, I did this video for this exhibition. Maybe most of you or some of you had the chance to visit it in 2014. When I did this, actually, I had the chance to go to Rotterdam and meet the team that was working at the time on this exhibition. They showed me this huge model, and they said to me that in each of these 15 rooms, there will have been one different exhibition about one of the 15 elements of architecture. These elements, the fundamentals, it means those elements that for Rem Koolhaas, OMA, and the Harvard Graduate School of Design were the main important elements, the elements that every architect worldwide can use in order to produce new architecture. the idea of this exhibition was very interesting, I think, because it has this idea of a huge catalog of possibilities, and this gives the idea to the visitors, to the viewers of this exhibition, that you can only have to select the elements and put them all together if you want to do something new. Well, they asked me to do this video because at the time, in 2014, I had a huge amount of images collected in a period of 3 years. And this collection was published online on a blog that was called Fictitious Interiors. So I had a huge amount of images according to corridors. Later, this collection went to Facebook, and then I had a huge amount of images according to the topic of toilet, mirrors, floor, stairs, dining room, kitchens, elevator, museums, and so on. And so I had a huge amount of clips and images. And then the OMA found this archive, and they thought that I could be able to deliver a film for their exhibition. So I did this. These were the 15 elements of architecture, and I edited an half-an-hour long film in which there were 15 different chapters related, one of them to each of the 15 elements of architecture. So there was, for example, a collection of corridors, a collection of facade according to animation film and other things like that. Floor, it means sinks shown from the top, windows opening and closing, as I said before in the Verifica Incerta video, and so on. So I would like, of course, it's impossible to screen this video now because it's an half an hour long, but I would like to show you the first 3 minutes of this film that was projected inside the introduction room in the main exhibition of that Biennale. And so I would like to, Mario to screen Elements, the second video, please.
Ellen, got anybody to take you home? Good.
Come on! Open up this door.
Okay, so this was the first chapter of the Elements movie. Then you had balconies and then floor and then all the other 15 elements of architecture. I would like to finish this short lecture about another project that I did. We spoke about remaking. We spoke about doing collages and combining footage in a found footage film. There's another possibility. We can remix materials if we speak about second-hand stuff to be used for something new. In remix, you can produce a new version, for example, of an existing song. Well, I tried to remix a very well-known scene from a very well-known movie that is, of course, The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick. Well, I think that this is probably one of the most famous horror movies ever directed, and probably it's one of the most famous movie delivered by Stanley Kubrick. I have to say that, of course, I'm not the first one that tries to say something new about this film in general, generally speaking, but also I'm not the only one that tried to say something new about this hallway, this corridor in this particular scene in which you have Danny going inside the corridors of the Overlook Hotel. So, for example, online you can find many different interesting videos delivered by video essayists, directors, and fans that work with the same material, such as Danny going inside the Overlook Hotel and try to say something new. For example, on the top left, you can see a beautiful video that is about symmetry in Stanley Kubrick's movie that was delivered by Kogonada, while on the top right, you can see a frame from this amazing movie that was called Room 237 that tried to explain with this drawing the architecture that was behind the structure of the building in the film. And recently, probably you have watched this. This is Ready Player One by Steven Spielberg. In the film, the main characters had the opportunity to use, I would say, virtual reality in order to visit the Overlook Hotel again, to go inside this space again and interact with the characters of the film. And this is amazing because it's one of my dreams. I would like to be able to walk inside the corridor of the Overlook Hotel and open the room number 237. Well, the last video that I would like to show is called The Corridor and work with this particular scene that is composed by all these frames, you know, in a 36 second long sequence, you have more or less 864 frames, 24 frames per second. So it means a huge amount of frames. Well, what I tried to do in this experiment was to put these frames inside the virtual space and trying to create a sort of domino. This is the domino shown from the top. And then when I did this domino, I tried to go inside this domino with a virtual camera, trying to reveal something new about the original corridor of the film. In the video that you are going to watch, in the short video, you will also listen at an amazing soundtrack delivered by Michele Osvaldo Pane, that is a musician that worked with me, and he did more or less the same with the original soundtrack. He took the original music and changed it, remixed it according to the movement of the camera. So I would like to screen the last video, the video number 3. So this was the corridor, an experiment that I did in order to understand the architecture of the interior space of the Overlook Hotel. But I would say that it's also an experiment trying to produce new architecture, virtual architecture, I would say, and say something new about a very well-known space. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Davide. It was again very hypnotic, all these images. Good. So thanks Miranda and Davide for this presentation and showing us all this new material for us. This secret treasure book that you show Miranda on the International, and all these the background before this film. That is the first work I saw from Davide at the Biennale, and this developing it further. Great. I had a question for both of you to start your debate, or to do this little short dialogue that you can have between you about curiosity on each other's work. But I would like to ask you if you can explain us what is your fascination of dealing with material that it's handled, that you find that it's fabricated by others more than starting from new. If you can explain. Yes, if you want to start, Miranda, you can switch on the micro and the microphone.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I've always been fascinated by objects because, first because I had to deal with them. I had to somewhere, someplace, some market, some home, some lost it in a cabinet, and you already take a lot of attention, because if you find it and you like it, you transmit. I mean, there's kind of connection between you and the object. So probably this happened a long time ago when I did some traveling on the 50s and 60s. I would say 60s more than 50s, 60s, yeah. And but at a certain point, I really find out. I don't know. It was like listen to them. Coming down late on the day and checking. Their conversations. I knew they had private lives and they had some affairs between them, probably. And so that sort of a charge of those objects. I always love to collect objects. I'm not a collector, but a collect means to keep them, but I'm not looking for and trying to get as many as no. I mean, but yes, I'm fascinated by them. I think most of them, there are orphans. I mean, they don't have a home, they don't have a family, they don't have an identification, they don't have a bio. They don't have a value on the market. So sometimes I'm thinking about those things, what is their adventure, what they've been moving on, and when if they were carried in deluxe luggage, well wrapped in a silky, just throw out on a market, on a flea market. So it's fascinating and it's true. But also I like to work with them. I don't know if they like that, but I like to sometimes to watch them and to turn to something else for sure, to give what David says. That sort of second life, whatever, third life, that sort of, this is like this beautiful word that came in one of David, I wrote down here, who was like the mockumentary. I mean, that's, that's making something that is not a model, is something else, but it transforms and it makes you feel and think about some other things, whatever. Yep.
Great. Well, I don't know. I would call myself a cinephile, I would say, like the French love to call the people that love cinema. And this started when I was very young, I would say 5 years old. And this passion became more and more important to me. And I would say it was still important while I started studying architecture. And then when I had the chance to be an architect for 10 years. Mm-hmm. So later, this passion became more important to me. And I remembered when I had the chance to do this video, the first video, I remember hundreds of different scenes. So because every time I watch a film, I watch a movie, I always like to collect scenes and clips. It doesn't matter if I have a project in mind. It doesn't matter. It's something that I have to do. I don't know why, but it's collecting and cataloging things and put them inside a folder on my laptop. And I think that this gives the possibility to produce a new project in the future. I like to work with cinema, with movies, because when you start taking a scene from a movie and then you start cutting in very small pieces, in very small videos, you notice how the editor edited the original film. You notice something about the background. You notice something about a particular way the actors act, and so on. So it starts as a way to study cinema, and then it has become a way to do my own stuff. I don't know how it works, but I know for sure that I can't stop. Every day I have to watch at least one film. And for me, watching cinema is like going in a playground. And I think that also Miralda experienced the same, because when he was explaining, for example, the different objects found in the Teddy's restaurant. And when I read also the article on the magazine that described this idea of digging the surfaces of the different walls, I think that a restaurant can be a playground for an artist, a playground for an architect. It's a playground in which you can experiment, you can dig like the children can do in a real playground. And then you can reveal something new, combining objects that no one thought that could be related. I think that in Miralda's presentation, Miralda lecture, what was interesting was also the titles of the different objects. They were very funny, but also without looking at the images, the title was already saying something about the project. I mean, there was the one, the Lobster Dream, but also the one, the Temptation of St. Anthony, or there were many objects. The old Coke cans mosaic is something that you can, if you say this title, something happen in your mind. So it's important also to work with words, but I can see that in your background you are working with words. So it's important. Starting from, in my presentation, you had some definition coming from a dictionary, because it helps us in order to understand what we are speaking about. Sure. It's something that is very important. And I have to say, it's something that, came for me from another movie, because if you remember Pulp Fiction, directed by Quentin Tarantino, it starts with the definition of what pulp fiction is, what pulp is. So sometimes it's very important to start from words if you want to produce something new.
Great, thank you. So let's introduce the next two guests we have this afternoon. Thank you very much, both of you, and then we come back to talk. And now is the turn of Lionel Devlieger. Lionel, you are there, ready?
Yes, I'm there. Can you see me?
Yes. Great.
All right.
Lionel is an architect and historian. In 2006, he co-founded Rotor, a Brussels-based organization specialized in the study of present-day material culture. Rotor fosters the debate on questions related to resources, waste, and obsolescence in the building sector through research projects, exhibition, conference, and publication. Also, Rotor coordinates large-scale dismantling operations, collaborates to architectural projects, and realize interior and urban design projects. I don't know, Lionel, how you manage to do all this. You are super well coordinated. I think you will show us how this is possible. And Lionel also has been involved in teaching at the universities across Europe and US, Berkeley, to Delft, Columbia, AA School in London. And Rotor has co-authored a book called Deconstruction et Réemploi, published by the School of Architecture in Lausanne, University EPFL. It's a textbook on building on component reuse. Also, is not an architectural firm in the traditional sense. These is your own words to describe Rotor. You have received several architecture awards in recent years, such as the Global Award for Sustainable Architecture in 2015, the Blueprint Architecture Award in 2015 also, the Junge Mascan Prize also in 2015, so a lot of prizes this year for you, and the Henry van de Velde Company Award in 2016, and the Schelling Architecture Award in 2018. Great, congratulations for so many prizes, and we look forward to your talk. Your microphone, Lionel.
Yes, here we go. Can you hear me? Good. Can you see this?
Not yet, but it takes a while. So let's wait a few seconds. Let's give 10 seconds to the screen to pop up.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, sorry about this. For some reason, my keynote is not appearing when I try to share the screen. Sorry, I'll try it again.
Yes, it's okay. No worry. Is it already open in your screen?
It is open in my screen, but then when I click on application window, it is not appearing. I'll try again to share my entire screen. Okay. You see this?
Yes.
Do you see this?
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, I will try to stick to the 20 minutes. But let me start by saying thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to be able to take some distance from what we're doing and to reflect a little bit, because indeed we do a lot. It's going to be difficult for me to present all what we do, but I see opportunities like this one, and certainly the article we could write for IQD. So that article was written by Camille de Gerfagnon and Victoria Van Can, who are collaborators at Rotor. It was an opportunity to reflect on what we're exactly doing, and these are kind of or pretty rare, so they're extremely welcome. So I'll start with a quick introduction of what Rotor is. So to begin with, it's mostly a group of people. So we started with 3 people in 2006, and now we're between 25 and 30 people. not everybody is full-time employed, but we are employed. So there's it's not like in many architecture firms in Belgium where people are like independent workers. Here, everybody's on the payroll of Rotor. This is a picture taken in 2018. It's on our current site, which is in this Brussels city center. So it's 10 minutes walking from the Brussels South train station where the high-speed train is arriving. We have an exceptionally large site, I would say, for an urban context there. It's 5,000 square meters. Half of it is indoors, half of it is outdoors, but it allows us to engage in a lot of activities, some of which I will try to describe. It's also worth mentioning that a group of Rotor is constituted by several architects, but definitely not everybody is an architect. So we have bioengineers, we have interior designers, we have people with law degrees, or we had people with law degrees. It's people who studied communication, etc. So we think it's really important to have a mixed team that is capable of taking on varied challenges. Now, usually when we start introducing Rotor, we say it's a table with 4 legs. Initially 3 legs, now it became 4 legs. One of the things we do is research and consultancy. So these are really commissions for doing research and consultancy work. It's an important part of our activity. Design is obviously something we engaged in ever from the beginning. And we do some architecture in the traditional sense, like the image on the right. The Fashion and Design Center in Brussels is a collaboration with an architecture firm. But it's worth mentioning that we are not registered as a classical architecture firm, so we cannot sign construction plans, for instance. So we need to collaborate. But I will come back on design projects later on. We set up a whole series of exhibitions in our career. We did the Belgium Pavilion at the 2010 Architecture Biennale. That is Usus Usur, the image on the right. And for instance, also an exhibition, a portrait of OMA at Barbican in 2011, and this huge exhibition behind the green door for the Oslo Triennale is also, let's say, a landmark moment for us. And then finally, we started in 2014 to engage in a new branch of activities, which is the deconstruction. So the actual dismantling of buildings to salvage their components, to renovate them and prepare them for reuse. And that is what I'm mainly going to talk about today. So this is a view on the left of our warehouse, right? It's the showroom. You don't really see the shop that is connected to it. You don't see the offices either, but this is, when I was talking about these 5,000 square meters, this is some of the ways we use it. Right now, on a daily basis, we treat hundreds of tons of materials that are coming in and going out again. So these are materials that, let's say, otherwise would have been trashed, that we are capable of salvaging, and we're very happy to do so. From an institutional point of view, it has become a double organization. So it was Rotor on the left is a non-profit organization. That's the way we incorporated it in 2006. And then in 2016, we officially incorporated Rotor DC, or DC for Deconstruction, as let's say, it's a cooperative company. So most of the employees of Rotor and Rotor DC are partners of the cooperative or stakeholders. We are based in Brussels, which, as you know, is the capital of Europe and the capital of Belgium, but in the very complex institutional landscape that Belgium is, with our 2 languages, our different regions. Brussels is an autonomous region, so it's like a tiny island that rules itself when it comes to issues that relate to waste, for for instance. So waste management is done by, let's say, is all regulated by the Ministry of the Environment in Brussels. And the nice thing about Brussels being a tiny entity is that the administrations are tiny as well. And we, as a non-profit organization that is doing consultancy work, have a very good contact with them. So we talk to them on I would say, a monthly, if not weekly basis to discuss what we are experts in, and they are happy to consult us as well. Brussels weighs, if you count all the buildings on that territory, it weighs something like 300 million tons. It produces 600,000 tons of demolition and construction waste per year, and it imports something like 800,000 tons. So it's getting obese year after year. That's just a little portrait. Eva, you mentioned the book that we wrote in 2018, Deconstruction and Réemploi. Unfortunately, it's only available in French for the moment, but that was indeed, it started as a commission from the Brussels region, or it was written in the context of a commission for the Brussels region. But it's a book in which we were able also to dig into the history of demolition in Belgium and in Brussels in particular. And I'm going to show you one demolition that we found interesting and intriguing. It took place around 1890. And it concerns the Palace of Justice of Brussels. You know that Brussels now has a very famous Palace of Justice, which once was the hugest building in the world, a very amazing, eclectical monster. But while that new building was being built, they demolished the old Palace of Justice, which had this very classical facade. The whole process is documented by a few pictures, but also by newspaper articles that are interesting because they show the details of the process. Here is the palace when the works are starting, and then you see here.
Excuse me, Lionel. I cannot see the screen now.
Sorry?
There's no image in the screen at the moment. I can only see the list and some calendar.
All right.
Maybe it's the technicians because it's in Spanish. It might not be your. It's not your.
I stopped sharing. Yeah, this is not indeed what we should see. I'll try sharing again if that's okay.
And maybe the hidden technicians we have around. Maybe this is one of their screens.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems that the technicians have seized over control.
Yeah. Let's see, now it's you again. So if you share, we will see the...
Okay. All right, I'm going to try, like I did the last time.
Yes, great.
Is that working?
Working, yes.
Okay, so we're coming from this image, and then they're proceeding here. And look at the people you see standing on the top of the facade. These guys are really demolition workers as they have existed for centuries. So until the late 19th century and even early 20th century, when a building was taken down, it was done by hand, by people that were starting at the top of the roof and that were taking down tile after tile, brick after brick, stone after stone. Materials were brought down, and you see there is like a huge display of stony elements in front of the facade. These elements are then inspected and taken away. They might be carried away immediately to the next building site in which they will be integrated. The next image shows a slightly further stage. You see a cart with a hose that is going to take building materials away. You also see a ladder that is giving access to the top of the columns that are remaining up there. And then this image, it's not a very clear image, but it shows a scene of the, let's say, the ground floor of the demolition site. You see windows on your left, which are windows that have been dismantled, and they've been dismantled carefully to avoid breaking the window panes. On the right, you see like little remains of wood that was used to put plaster on. That is going to be used as firewood. So it looks a bit messy, but actually it's a very well organized deconstruction site that where all the fractions are carefully sorted. Whatever can be recycled will be recycled, but they will try to reuse as much as possible. Now we found that this is the situation for most buildings until the late 19th, early 20th century. But then, of course, the First World War happens, and this is not an image from Brussels, but it's an image from Ypres, which is close to the border, is really western Belgium, close to the border with France. The whole town was completely reduced to rubble, and Belgium becomes from then on a kind of master nation in rubble management. And it's as if that legacy was never shaken off since, and it's something we kept with us. Now, obviously, rubble management becomes even easier when you have heavy machinery that can help you to do so. This is like a promotion image produced by the company Caterpillar, which of course is an American company. They co-invented the bulldozer, which is a really an interbellum invention, like so many machines that were reliant on a diesel engine. Now it was let's say the bulldozer made huge progress during the Second World War because the US Army was using so many of them on the front. It's often forgotten, but you had a thing called the Construction Battalion, which was a division of the army that was doing all the construction works and building air landing strips and etc. They used massive amounts of these bulldozers. Afterwards, they also used them to clear big cities like Berlin and in Belgium as well. But so a few bad habits were taken over from these wars. This is the old Brussels South train station that was demolished right after the war. And here you still see it in its state in 1928. Now, the thing is that's also described in this newspaper article. When they tried to tear down the main portico of the station, which is shaped like a triumphant arch, you see it on the right of this image here. It's topped by a gigantic bronze statue that is representing progress, and it's a goddess holding a torch, and she's standing on a kind of winged chariot that is representing railroads. She's progressed through technological innovation. Now, when they were demolishing this whole structure, apparently the thing was so robust that they couldn't tear it down with dynamite alone. So they used dynamite together with the truck that was pulling portions of the whole structure down. And they didn't even care to take the bronze statue away before smashing the whole thing. So it was the whole thing was reduced to one huge pile of rubble. And you might think like, okay, this is a low point in demolition practices in Belgium or in Europe, but actually you have to realize that from then on, after the Second World War, demolition is going to be defined as, like written here, this is taken from a textbook on demolition that is from 2010, so this is not that old. An engineering project to reduce a building through manual and mechanized means to, with or without the assistance of explosive materials, to piles of mixed rubble or debris. So this is the definition of demolition today, is reducing buildings to piles of debris. In practice, this means that materials that are perfectly reusable, such as these bricks, this natural stone, these tiles, etc., that are often worth like hundreds of euros per ton. They're reduced to rubble with a machine like this one. This is a jaw crusher, it's a machine that is funnel shaped. It has a mobile part and then another part that is moving with of course, driven by an engine. And they will, let's say, munch whatever you put in the funnel into debris, masticate it, as you might say, into debris like this one. Now, the funny thing is that Belgium is often presenting itself like a kind of model nation because I'm sorry, I'm being distracted by my daughter, which I will have to send away.
Okay. Wait.
Sorry about this.
Je veux dire, mais quand tu disais qu'on allait regarder un film quand on était revenu, tu parlais des films de Issem, de Virginie. Tu parlais des films de Virginie.
Bénédicte, je suis en pleine conférence, Loris vient de déranger ici.
Okay. Lionel, she was very interested, no? Lionel, she was interested in your talk, no? The micro, again. She wanted to participate.
She did. She absolutely wanted to be involved. She hates it when she's left aside like this. But yeah, sorry about this. I have to share my screen again.
Yes.
Here you go. Yes. No, so I was saying that Belgium is often presenting itself as a model nation because we have a high recycling rate. It means we have a lot of mineral rubble and we reduce it into debris, and we call that recycling. Well, it's just dumping that debris in holes when you're doing engineering works, etc. But if you look at the amount of waste that we produce per capita in this ranking, you see that Belgium is on top. We produce almost 2 tons of construction demolition waste per year. In Spain, you're doing far better. You're somewhere lower than half at 0.3 tons per inhabitant per year. So congrats for that. Now, when you go back to the war years, of course, you have what I showed you, like debris being taken out by bulldozers. Now, these are images that were filmed not in West Berlin, where the bulldozers were raging, but in East Berlin, which was under Soviet rule. And there you had the Trümmerfrauen, as you know them, which were the women that were salvaging the bricks from the debris and piling them up so that they could be available again for building new structures. Of course, this is less efficient than using a bulldozer, but on the other hand, it has so many advantages, and like both the symbolic and the environmental advantages of reuse that we like to promote as well. And so I will now give you an example. We are not reusing bricks, but we are reusing something very similar, which is building tiles. This is a building, it's a building from the former radio and telephone and telegraph company in Belgium, building from the 1930s in Brussels, where we intervened to salvage the tiles both on the walls and on the floor. So very simply, we have a series of workers that are hand removing the tiles, that are putting them into crates. The crates are being brought down. That's like a moving company that is moving stuff. They are brought to our compound in Brussels. There we remove the hard crust you see at the bottom of the tiles. It's being removed first manually, and then we use acid baths. So it's a kind of concentrated vinegar solution that we let the tiles in for quite a while, a few days. Then we take them out again. Then they are with heavy I mean, they're washed again in order to obtain a clean tile that is, as we said in the IQD article, is like rejuvenated. It's as if it went into a bath to rejuvenate them completely. The packaged again, these packages here represent 1 square meter of the tile, and then this is a view on the building I was showing you before. So the Telephone and Telegraph company that has been completely renovated, and from offices it became housing units. And so in exactly the same buildings, the same tiles are placed again to this effect. Now, this is a first very straightforward example of material salvage. Now, when you apply the logic to different kind of projects, you obtain different types of challenges, and I would say not problems, but interesting challenges. Now, so when you project it to a huge building, and when you try not only to salvage the tiles, but to salvage far more than that, you obtain something like this project, which is our first big demolition, let's say, or deconstruction. It took place in 2014, so before Rotor DC was officially incorporated as a company. And it concerns the demolition of this building. So it's a brutalist building from the 1960s, inaugurated early 70s. It's the headquarters of Belgium's most important bank. Initially, it was called General de Banque. Now it was taken over, later it was taken over by BNP Paribas Fortis. The architecture has never been appreciated so much from the outside, the brutalist architecture, but the insides of it, all designed by a famous Belgian designer called Jules Watts, have always been considered really worthwhile. So this is a view on the bank vault that is not under the footprint of the building and has been conserved. So it's sealed off for the moment while reconstruction works are going on. But you had the executive offices on the 6th and 7th floor that were completely designed by Jules Watts with extremely precious materials that had to be demolished. And so we were invited by Docomomo Brussels to intervene there and salvage as much as possible from these interiors. For instance, we took away the granite that was on the cladding all the walls. So this is flamed granite from Italy. So we took that granite away, we cleaned all these elements on site, and then we packaged them and shipped them off to our place. Keep them in memory, but because they will come back. On the ground floor of the bank, you had a public area where you just had clients coming in to do their banking affairs. And that whole area was covered with a false ceiling in sheet metal. It's a really beautiful ceiling. And so all the lighting equipment was above it, so it was filtering the light. So that is also one component that we completely analyzed first and then dismantled. We did that with our own teams. We put these away in crates that were made to dimension so that we could ship them or store them and ship them away very easily. And so then afterwards, we put that on our web shop and website, and we sold effectively the whole amount. So it's more than 1,000 square meters of that material. Which was very much demanded by architects, such as the architects of this project, which is a completely new building by Plus Office Architecten in Brussels as well. And they one of the ceilings in that building was covered with these salvaged sheet metal ceiling elements. Now, so that was one. I mean, I could talk about many other components of that building that we salvaged. I will talk about a few later on, but that was the first project I wanted to talk about. Then there is, let's say, a more recent project. This is a project that we started last year. It's a project for not a demolition in this case, but let's say a renovation of also a 1960s project in the Brussels city center. It's the Brucker Tower. These were the former headquarters of the Philips company. These are a few images of the era, so the early 70s. This is how these offices looked. Unfortunately, the original interiors have been replaced in the meanwhile. This is how the building looked from afar, from the outside in the 70s. So you see there was a huge Philips building on the ground floor. Now, the building has been bought by a developer, a rather young company that wanted to be exemplary in terms of sustainability. And they took us on board to try and implement circular, let's say, material strategies for the building. Now, we did some archive work, and we saw that when you look at the way the building was conceived and constructed, there was a kind of typically socialist and progress-oriented dimension to it that wanted to stimulate the industry through the building itself. But then it was focusing on local industry. It means that all the steel in the building was Belgian steel. All the natural stone was Belgian natural stone. So there was an idea of let's say, creating employment through a building like that, which we found interesting because it's a dimension that is often so much lacking in architecture today. So this is the reconstruction in progress or renovation. So from the interiors, there was not so much that was salvageable. There was a lot that we took away, but nothing original. The facade needs to be completely replaced, and we looked at it and we realized that the facade was originally covered by these eye profiles that are it's an element that was copied from you also see it in Mies van der Rohe's Seagram building. In his case, he used bronze eye profiles. It's pure ornament. Here, these were in aluminum. So we tested the dismount of a few of them. We had them renovated industrially. So they were anodized again. And here you see on the right, you have the original profile. In the middle, it's one that has been anodized to the blank aspect. The other one is to black. And we integrated these elements in an exhibition we set up in the building itself, which was meant for the architects to present them a few materials that could be integrated in their project while they were still developing their own design project. And so the exhibition was containing elements, as I showed, these profiles that were salvaged from the building itself, or that could be salvaged in huge amounts. But it also featured like the octagonal ceiling panels you see. These are elements that are coming from other buildings that were being dismantled or recently dismantled around still in the Brussels city center area. We then set up a kind of huge program of integration of these materials, being either salvaged from site or coming from close by. And the idea was to make the stream of new incoming materials such that it had the hugest possible amount of reclaimed components in it. So we were heading for a 2%. So that 2% of the materials that needed to be injected into the renovation project would be salvageable, but now we're probably at something like 5% in weight or value. So the fun thing was that we could also convince the demolition contractor, who usually is doing just pure demolition work, to start doing some very minute dismantling work. Like here, these are extremely heavy natural stone slabs that this crane is taking apart, and these elements are then stacked and will be either reused in the project itself or will go to a new project. But they need to be stored away safely during the construction operations. Funnily enough, we were able to salvage also a chiller from this building. A chiller is the kind of unit that is cooling down in your HVAC system. It's cooling down the air. So it works with the condensation and then the evaporation of gases. It's robust technology, so it can go through a few years. And here the whole operation was done in intimate coordination between the producer of this entity, the demolition contractor, the owner of the building, and then the engineers, and then of course the designers of the new building where this unit is going to. So the unit could not stay in the building because the capacity of the building was going to change, so it needed to be adapted to that new capacity. And then the last project I will show to finish off is no longer a demolition or a reconstruction project. It's a renovation project completely designed by us, which is the kind of project that allows us to integrate elements that we've taken from elsewhere. The tree that you see here is some melamine marquetry that is coming from the cafeteria of the bank building I showed you before. So it's a 1970s design that we integrated in the interior of a social housing company. So this is the area where they receive the clients. So these are people that are looking for a social house. This is in a very tiny city of Flanders. So it's very remote from, let's say, the capital city. But it's a social housing company that always has been exemplary in their sustainability strategy. So already in the 70s, they were going for solar heating and water recuperation, etc. And they're trying to keep up that standard. And so most of what you will see in this project is salvaged material, like the chairs you see here are always secondhand. The wood in these in the counter is secondhand parquet. You recognize the ceiling elements from the bank building. The other lighting equipment are secondhand as well. The doors you see of that little cabinet, that is it's an office where sensitive, let's say, discussions with candidates or renters can be held. These glass doors are also salvaged from a 1970s building, an office building. So, and it looks like that. Now, it may be important to mention, I guess you can see it as well when we set up something like that. This is, of course, collage work, but we try to avoid making it very explicit that this is secondhand material. We think that it's important that people feel taken care of, and unfortunately, like giving the impression that things are new is important to people. So it's a kind of psychological dimension that we take into consideration. These are the offices that are not accessible to the public. We didn't design the architecture here, so this is done by W2 local architects there, but very capable, who designed a circular building. But then we provided the granite that is covering the floor here, which is the granite from the bank building that you saw before. The panels on the right are salvaged acoustic panels. All the furniture is, of course, the second hand. This lobby area or these seats are also salvaged seat elements that have been reupholstered. And then in the kitchen, of course, all the furniture is second-hand, and let's say the cupboards here from the kitchen counter is they're coming from a 1970s design, also for an office space that we modified the whole and we transformed it into a kitchen ensemble. As a final image, I will show you on the right, you have the tiles of the toilet in that, let's say, social housing company, which are tiles that are coming from one of the projects they have been intervening on. So, of course, the social housing company is also building and transforming a lot of buildings themselves. And here it was a doctor's house that they salvaged these tiles from. So we have cleaned them and put them back in place. And on the left, you have a detail of that kitchen counter that is salvaged from that 70s building, also made by a famous local designer. And the funny thing is that it's the wood that he used. So he combined melamine, blue melamine, with wood that is wenge. It's a tropical hardwood from the Congo. So you have to imagine that a tree had to be felled to produce these architectural detail, just like lots of CO2 had to be expelled in the air to produce the tiles you see on the right. So the feeling we have when we look at these elements is to say, like, okay, you have to, the damage is done, so to say, but you have to honor these materials for what they've meant. And I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lionel. It was very, yes, a very important intervention for this afternoon, and also your comments on the value of use of things. Maybe Curro, is it, everything is prepared? Everything is working?
Hello, I hope so.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce you first. Curro Claret, an industrial designer. He studied in Barcelona at Elisava School of Design and in Central St. Martin's College of Art and Design in London. And since the late 90s, Curro is working, designing objects, products, furniture, happenings, strategies, and some interior design for companies like BD, Barcelona Design, or Camper, also, and for institutions, gallery, or private commissions and foundations. He's regularly working with Aureli's Foundation, Todd Raval, or We Are Water Foundation. Curro also has regular teaching activities in Barcelona at Elisava, and also has taught in different universities in Europe and America. He has worked also as curator of exhibition, always relating creative process and society. And his work has been published in different media and publications, such as the Design Encyclopedia by the Museum of Modern Art in New York, 100 Years of Design, or Modern Living Accessories. And also in 2015, the editorial GG published a book called Imperfect Portrait on the work of Curro Claret. That is a written interview that Oscar Guayabero and you had, and it goes a tour around your work, and also Ramon Ubeda was involved in this book. And Curro, you said of your own work that you like to work being on the margins, in the neglected, and in the careless. So we want to hear more about this, Curro. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Eva. So happy to be here, and with all the mix of people that you arrange, and very, very fortunate, very fan of all these people. And yeah, I try to talk a little bit on this project we are doing since almost 10 years now, mainly with Aureli's Foundation, with an association that works with people who have been in the street. And actually, I'm going to try to see if I'm lucky enough, and the first attempt these things works, to share the
Working, Curro, perfect.
Oh, excellent.
Yes.
Surprise, nice surprise. So I would like to explain a little bit this project, and this is of course it's a very different than Lionel. Is a really small scale thing, and basically what we're doing here is we're exploring how building furniture can support or can be part of certain people in difficulties to recover certain normalization. And to do that, I by chance found this book is a recipe from nuns, Clarissa's nuns, and they collect different recipes, and at the end of the book, they suggest 10 points where they consider the action of cooking should be carefully paying attention. And actually, when you read this, you will see now, it's just, you find, you can apply this almost to anything, I guess, you know. So let's see how it goes. This is the advice number 1. Yeah, maybe I guess I read quickly. So not necessarily the richest dishes are the ones made with the most expensive ingredients. A simple potato omelette can be an exquisite delicacy if we eat surrounded by the love of our family and friends. Of course, you know, this is nuns wrote that, but obviously I think everybody can keep a certain distance that you with the actually religious thing. So the not the most expensive ingredients, you know, if we apply to the issue we're talking today, that turns us in recognizing, you know, what is the value of a material eventually, and what is that relationship to economical cost. And what we do basically, it's just go out, take whatever we find, and depending the groups of the people, and with the help of a metal joint that is just behind the seat and helps to connect the legs and the seat. So we explore in a quite rough and direct way how it's possible to make initially a stool, and then with this metal we start to explore different elements, you know, lightings. Then we got some commissions, in this case from Camper. We got the chance to do 2 shops, and or we sometimes through gallery shows and or to rent. Sometimes we rent this furniture to events. So, or in this case, it was a commission for a percussionist quartet they were playing here in Barcelona in l'Auditori. So it's you see, basically it's an attempt to explore really how far it's possible to make very basic stuff. And in this case, we don't. It's obvious that it's reused material. We quite not modify. We don't try to show what is not. And actually, we try to see if the state we find those materials have enough value and recognition that to keep them more or less the way they are. Advice number 2, it's important to cook with the products of our land. On many occasions, we appreciate more the exotic food instead of what we have at home. We realize the value of things only after we have lost it. Many immigrants told us of their nostalgia for some beans, a fabada or paella during their stay in a foreign country. Actually, I'm not sure, Eva, do you think if I read that, it sounds a bit strange? Or
no, it's not very, yes.
Okay.
Makes a lot of sense.
Okay. So in this case, as I mentioned before, we just, initially we were out the street and with the groups of people just taking the material we found there. Since a few years ago, we officially we cannot do that properly because there are certain regulations. You know, there is a concessions and actually the material that are on the street. There is a company who has the concession to use them, and this happens actually not only in Barcelona. I mean, I've been doing some workshops in different cities, and we find these things, you know, in different everywhere. So it's definitely here a big issue, you know, of economically, who is the proprietor of this, who is in charge, who are allowed to get access to that. And we are now, of course, since we cannot do that, we are from a rails, we are dealing with when like Rotor, when there is a building dismantled or a home. So we try to go there before, and just to be able to pick some of this stuff. Like this image, for instance, this was we did this workshop in Vienna, and we were not allowed to take stuff from the street, and we got the permission to this place where they do they collect all this stuff and do the selection. And you see this. Of course, the thing is that they are going to destroy this material. They are going to transform in something of less valuable, in the sense that they are going to make just a combustion material, or they are going to do this conglomerate wood kind of industrial good. So we actually find that well, we before that it's possible, to do other things. Advice number 3: you have to cook with care and love. This probably is one of my favorites. We all remember the dishes our mothers prepared for us when we were children. The love they put in the stews produced to us a greater effect than the vitamins contained in the dishes. So the love to put there, of course, we that's one of the key elements. The commitment of the people involved in there, the seriously they take, and not because we are using these materials and we are not kind of cleaning them. Does it mean they are not precious, valuable? And we try to take it as that. And just for a detail from the shop, from Camper, that this is a little thing that nobody's gonna see under the stool. Only architects and designers do that. But we still believe, it's we have to pay a lot of care on doing every manipulation. Or this one, it was a commission from a little hotel in Barcelona, York Hotel, and you see the legs here on the table. For instance, that it was this one guy from a rails, from this used to be in the street. He found like in the other part of the city, and he spent like one day almost walking from there to the workshop. As he recognized, he found this wood with the painting so appealing to him. So that this I think this attitude is what we try to have. Advice number 4: if we want to have a good domestic economy, we have to keep the leftovers. We must not throw away anything. Stale bread can be used to make delicious torrijas, and with the leftover fish, we can prepare extraordinary croquetas. Actually, this is the point. What is a leftover? What does it mean? We are throwing away things, and the idea itself is quite throwing away, and we are used to. This is our system, the economy, the throwing away economy. And it's, I guess, we part of the project is challenging and as many other practice, of course, but trying to show that to question what is throwing away and why. And the paradox is, one of the paradox to me is that most of the materials we work with, all these pieces of wood, the wood it's themselves are of better quality than most of the new industrial furniture wood made of. So we are just throwing value that is richer than what we are producing and we are doing. And well, you see, for instance, this was the commission with the musicians, with the lights on the back, and yeah, well, all this is it's from the street. No, of course. Number 5, advice number 5. It's true that certain built-in kitchen appliances are useful to work faster. But in any case, these are differences between the dishes prepared with patience, without looking at the watch, and the ones prepared just to make them quickly. Coming back from time to time to the traditional ways of cooking relaxes the spirit and contributes to make those near us happier. Yeah, it's so nice, you know, these words there and these terms that we don't listen very often in the business logics. Of course, there is a time cost implications in anything we do, and we have to be careful there, you know, because this furniture we are eventually we try to be in the market, in a space in the market. But saying that, we are not rushing. We not pretend to follow the same logics as pure industrial products. We know we cannot do that. There's this work with a group of people with in a certain situations, and we have to put other elements there. And sometimes, you know, we have basic tools. And yeah, I guess it's a certain dichotomy that if we had a really sophisticated, wonderful tools, we could do much products, much production. But then maybe I believe we will lose some other aspects, perhaps. And like sometimes even not, we have electrical source, you know, is not just the manual source every time, but in certain moments, I think we use manual source, and we find this is important because manual allows to have an understanding of the material, a different comprehension, a different connection, and that's part of the activity that we do. Advice number 6. It is good to teach young people to appreciate and value the well-made cuisine and the recipes of our cultural heritage. You know, and it was nice. I think this word, you know, and when we started today, when Marc Aureli starts and makes mention of the words and heritage, you know, it sounds a very powerful word. Their sensitivity and their stomach will thank us. So one very important task that we are doing with our RELs and when we're doing a workshop with other organizations, it is to mix these groups of kind of marginated people, of outside people with let's say the whole of society, and in a way you could say that our project, it's in a part is an excuse almost to generate these situations where people meet without hopefully the prejudices of, oh, I'm whatever, I'm designer, super cool, or I'm architect, super great, or whatever. But I'm just a person, and I'm doing today, like this image. This was a workshop we did in Bratislava with an organization that works with people who literally live on the street, and some students from the architectural and design university. And here some of the participants, and it was really nice that when we were in the workshop, you know, it was almost like some of the people who were living on the street, some of the participants were actually teaching the architectural students how to use the tools and to manage properly the machinery and to cut. So somehow it was reversing a little bit what you may expect on a certain roles. But anyway, this chance to share a time through an object and nothing else, I think it's a powerful element. Advice number 7: food does not attract us just for the taste, but also for smell and sight. It costs nothing to complete a dish with a simple decoration, enhancing its look and making it more attractive. The success of a recipe is sometimes in its presentation. The great chefs are experts in this field. I have to say, this is my fault, that sometimes I feel some people see what we do is a bit brutalist, a bit rough, a bit dirty. And well, I guess to me I feel we don't have to pretend to do furniture. Like, we are not IKEA, and we don't pretend. We are using other contexts, other situations, and in a way, I think this aesthetics a bit rough. There is certain intention here also to manifest more a kind of disconformity or a kind of reality that we don't see sometimes very kindly. Well, maybe now I'm talking, I don't know, too much. Anyway, this chapter is about decoration and, of course, and aesthetics. Of course, to me it's super relevant. It's just that we are searching other kind of aesthetic. We're exploring differently, but we are interested, and the work we do on the final moments are a pure aesthetic discussions with the participants. What is better? Shall it be red or green, or is this combination? How do you feel it? I mean, it's a pure aesthetic decision, and should be emotional as well. To me, it's. I think I always feel it's a bit Frankenstein, but in a good. To me, Frankenstein in a collage of different people, but there is an alma. There is a spirit, a nice guy behind that tries to be a good guy. Advice number 8: in the kitchen, you have to be bold and work with imagination. We can all be creators of simple and even more complex dishes. Most of the recipes we know have been created by non-professional chefs with an innovative spirit. Definitely, this project is to involve non-professional people. And actually, we don't try to train people to become professionals in a way, because we work most of the times with collectives that they will have very hard to be back in a professional, pure way. So we try to explore these qualities we believe they are, of course, in the non-professional action. And of course, everybody has a story, has ideas, has ways to see things. Like this person from Aureli, and he had the bird, and he wanted, and he did this bird support, and well, others just entertain themselves in the legs. This was a workshop in Valencia with Maquia, and it was this participant spending 2-3 days making carefully the leg thing. So this project is about exploration and about being a bit, sometimes, wild and dirty. Advice number 9: when cooking, you have to be scrupulous with cleanliness and order. The person who dirties less, is cleaner, and not the ones who cleans more. You know, that's super great. Having the tools in the correct place, washing them after use and putting them back in the proper place is a way of doing that. Should be the norm of conduct for our whole life. You know, he cannot be agree with that. And we try with that, not always with the same success, but we try, you know, to understand that those tools, we have to take care of that, and we have to clean them. And that's, I got a feeling that, you know, of course, that's very clear for those people committed, you know, like this one, Aurelio. He was very committed and he was doing this very carefully. But I understand that not everybody has the same passion to the work. And that thing also makes me think about it, you know, how far are we taking care of the public things, you know, when the tools that we use are used for many different people, some people without much abilities, they're not used properly. Sometimes you get the feeling, oh, because it's not mine, I'm not caring the same way, or, well, this is a challenge on the project. And number 10, cooking is art, and it can be an obligation or gratifying time. Our Lord, and we are grateful for being enabled to make the others happy from the stove of our monasteries. Well, yeah, I wish, I would love to. We try, of course. It cannot be an obligation. I mean, this is a really, we are paying a lot of attention when we work with different collectives. I mean, why are you here? Are you participating? Is someone forcing to you? I mean, should be a decision, and should be you should be a chance to explore and to have a good time, to enjoy that. And you, of course, you realize that when that happens, the results goes farther than the pure aesthetic thing. And I'm not saying that the aesthetics are not vital for us, you know, it is certainly, but I mean that there is something else, that behind each of the stool there is a story, and somehow I would like to believe that something of that it transmits on the pieces. And actually, this is one of the first. This is Aurelio, one of the first stools that we did. And yeah, he will explain a story from here. You know, he found the big tree. It was near the place where he used to go, and the legs he found. And then he thought, I mean, it's kind of a portrait, a little bit, I feel, somehow. So actually, this is the presentation. Thank you.
This was very good, Curro. Really enjoy it. And that's great. So maybe we can go. I will let you and Lionel, you have introduced complete another field into this subject of second-hand, dealing with economy and also with work and the quality of the work that we spend so many hours. I think also really good. But I would like to ask both of you also again, why is this fascination for this object, in the case of Curro, forgotten by others, in the case of Lionel, is willing to put them again in use and even prepare them, that they have this mixture of being new and being prepared for another mind to think on them. And I also like the contrast between the two ways of presenting materials when you deal with them. So who starts? Lionel?
Well, maybe I have to mention that I was trained as an architect, but I'm also a historian, in the sense that I did a PhD on the Italian 16th century at some point in my life. And it's actually through that work and by looking at the 16th century and that I realized the wealth of culture that could be embedded in a material, for instance. And I'm thinking of the way that Renaissance artists or sculptors or architects were reusing marbles that had been imported to Italy by the Romans, and that they were perfectly capable of reading what understanding the Romans had of that marble, and then reinterpreting it and taking that meaning along in their own project. And so yeah, I think it's a fascination with the semantics of materials in my case that brought me to go on board enthusiastically with the Rotor project. So there's a lot of semantics that is already there in an object that you find. There's also a lot of industrial or artisanal knowledge and expertise and skill, and that is far too often pushed aside by architects because the idea is to imprint your own creative ego on something. And I think that it's a bit a lesson that we have to learn, is to be humble when confronted with materials.
Great. Thank you. Curro.
Actually, I could copy quite a lot the comments from Lionel. To me, the first, I would completely agree. The first impulse, it's pure aesthetic appealing. I just like those materials, and I like of course, if you go further, I like the stories. I like the marks. I like the feeling that it was used previously, and somehow it's, if you think in a human history, you know, it was other people before us. Hopefully, there will be other people after, and we are just there a little time. So this continuity, you know, we transform the resources, we use what it was before, and the guys who come later, they will use, hopefully, if it's not too much shit, what we left. So this thing of continuity and little transformation depending the circumstances and the conditions and the needs, I think it quite appeals to me that this, what we do is not the final thing. It's just for a moment, for a while, we're using, but then it will live longer in a different life.
Great, thank you. So let's move to the third part of this meeting. That is when we will join three architects that are in some different way related to this revision that the heritage plan of Barcelona is going to take place, and they have been involved in some previous work, and one of them also will be implicated in the future of it. The first person that I introduce is Laia Grau. Laia, are you there? Well, Laia is an architect by the School of Architecture in Barcelona, and also has a master's degree in gender and equality. Has an experience as a urban planner architect, both in private and public sector. She has been working during a decade as an architect for the autonomic government of Catalonia in the Department of Territory and Sustainability. And since last October, she is Deputy Director of Urban Planning and Infrastructure of the Barcelona City Council. So we also have with us two architects that are involved in this research of the Barcelona City Council on city heritage, for the city heritage plan, is Gemma Serch. Gemma is an architect. I can see you there. Gemma is an architect by the School of Architecture, where she has her own practice called Matters, a highly specialized studio focused in interventions of restoration and refurbishment of listed buildings and historical interiors. And she is author of a comparative research based on international study cases of urban heritage protection systems commissioned by the Barcelona City Council. And our third guest is Alessandro Scarnato, who studied architecture in Florence and holds a PhD from the Polytechnic University of Barcelona, where he teaches history of city and architecture. He lives and works in Barcelona, where he has his own practice, mainly focused on interior, architectural, and urban refurbishment in historic context. Alessandro is the author of the book Barcelona Supermodel, a research on the 3 decades of urban transformation experienced in the old town of Barcelona. And this book won the City of Barcelona Award in 2016. So I pass the word to Alessandro. Alessandro, are you there? Perfect.
Hi, everybody. I want to thank you, Eva, for inviting me, and all the previous speakers for their amazing contributions. I have to say that I enjoyed all of them, and I found them very interesting, and I hope that also the public from home took good note of all the inputs that we've received. I would like to, I've had so many things, let's say, in my head while listening to this contribution. And I would make one, let's say, personal note, and then I will put 3 smaller reflections that might activate the debate. The personal note is that me, as an architect, I grew up in Florence, where I studied, which is a city that lives in the cult of the past, of the don't change anything, which doesn't mean that in Florence there is no construction activity and nothing has ever touched, but there for sure the mindset is that if something works, it is not that it has a second hand, it's the same hand over and over and over and over again. Therefore there is no the problem of reuse, because it never stops to be used. Something, a building, a furniture, or an entire block of apartments. And when I arrived the first time in Barcelona, I was absolutely shocked, because I saw a cultural environment where whatever was not brand new was felt as something absolutely with no value, no interest at all. And the same shock that I was provoking in the locals when I was saying that my apartment in Florence was about 800-year old, and it was not one of the oldest in the city. Well, I had the same shock when somebody was telling me I live in a second-hand house, but not second-hand in the way we are understanding this expression here today, but second-hand, let's say, in the not so good meaning of something that has been used already, so has lost part of the value, because the only real valuable things are the brand new. So I have to say that in these recent years, things have been changing in Barcelona because of many aspects, among them also the constant interaction with this global world, so different points of view influence each other. Also, there is a new generation of architects, as the Italian architect Carlo Scarpa used to say, a new generation of architects stops at the age of 60, meaning that we're not talking of extremely young people, but definitely the new architects are more sensitive to this situation. This is a personal reflection on the fact that this consideration for the existing material has improved a lot, and therefore there is more room for debate and also practice in the sense that we are discussing here today. I would like to make 3 notes that hopefully will trigger some a part of discussion. The first is something that has been let's say, I found very interesting in the communication of Davide. Ciao, Davide. I have to say that there is something that in architecture is a relatively, historically speaking, very relatively new, and is the concept of originality. For many centuries, the architects have not felt this huge need to produce some flabbergasting architecture that leaves everybody absolutely shocked from its innovative image and originality. And in the past, they were all trying Palladio, Leon Battista Alberti, trying to understand the essence of the classical architecture and to give new interpretations. And this is something that came to my mind when you showed the movies that have been reshot, let's say, from the same author or others, which is somehow the same kind of attitude of architects for a long part of history of architecture that I think recently has now become again accepted. I mean, you are no more forced to have some disruptive idea when you propose some project. The fact that the Mies van der Rohe award recently has been given to a rehabilitation, for instance, is a sign of that, you know. And I think so. This is the first note, that this concept of originality has done a lot of good things, but also has had several very bad side effects. And I think that it's very good that in this moment we are rethinking about this myth of originality at any cost, which I am convinced produced so many damages to our cities and also to our way of life, because finally architecture is something that everybody sooner or later has to interact, the equipments, the homes, the way the city is structured. The second observation, it's the second note, is about a risk, let's say. This reusing, and it's something that came to my mind above all listening to Lionel, which anyway I consider a fantastic experience, but the risk is maybe because I've been working a lot recently in the aspect of the gentrification, no? To study the gentrification, how to fix a space or a property or a city can turn it into something that finally is used by somebody else as a financial asset, you know. So it's just a personal thought, like in a brainstorming attitude. What can we do to avoid that this reuse of materials cannot turn into kind of cheap way to add the values for the market? Like I take something that is probably going to be thrown down, I dismantle it, I reuse these elements, and finally what I have is the possibility, I'm talking in terms of the big investors, no, to just add a value, but instead to buy, let's say, to trigger a procedure involving some cut-edging designers, I do something that might have a kind of vintage atmosphere that we've seen can actually produce some side effects that we don't like a gentrification. So this is a possible element of discussion. I'm not saying that it's something that might happen, that will happen for sure, but I have this aspect that it deserves a bit of reflection. And finally, the last point that I would like to point out, it came to my mind above all when Curro said something about these guys that are involved in this process are not professionals. I think that the value of the professional preparation and the professional processes, it's something that we should be able to keep while we finally get again alive this consideration for the second-hand use. It's true that there are a lot of aspects in which we architects should be more, or designers in general should be more humble. And this is what I said before about the concept of originality. So the fact that we don't necessarily always have the right solution. Many times the interaction with a vast range of involved people can produce better solutions rather than the ones that we have only when we close in our studio. But it's something that anyway I think should also be considered. What can be the new dynamics that we can develop between established and certified professionals and all the other constellations of actors and stakeholders involved in this new situation of the second-hand mindset, let's say. I'm done.
Great. Good. So who takes the who wants to answer by order? Davide. Davide, on the concept of originality.
Yeah, on the concept of, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I completely agree with you. I don't trust in originality at any cost. And it's something that I always say to my students. I always say to them, as designer, interior designer or exhibition designer, because this is what I teach, that sometimes copying is the best form of originality that you can achieve. I mean, start copying, it's a good way to understand what to do. And then when you learn how to copy, you can learn how to do original things. So I always like to say that, okay, it's learning by doing, but also it's learning by redoing. Well, this is my position. I do think that it's possible to produce original things, and we have seen many of them today, many projects that are in a way original, but I started with something that is maybe it's already existing, and maybe without everything was produced without the idea of being original at any cost.
Good. Lionel, did you hear me? Yes.
Now I can hear you. Yes, I was losing you. Yeah, well, of course, the question of the gentrification is an important one, and I'm in a way glad you're asking it. Let's say it's first really important that we stress the fact that we are aware of being sometimes used as a kind of, let's say, real estate developers who are trying to use us as a Vaseline for facilitating a demolition. And that is something that we absolutely try to avoid being sucked into. So each time that we feel that there is a risk of some demolition that is being, let's say, motivated by the fact that in the end, Rotor will come by and they will salvage the best pieces, then we just walk away as soon as we can. So the projects we intervene on are usually projects where the decision to demolish has already been taken and is in a way unavoidable, and for many reasons that we always regret. Let's put it like that. So we completely subscribe to the idea that adaptive reuse is always better than anything else, and So first, you must try not to demolish anything. That's definitely something we would say. But we know that the world we live in is not functioning like that. And then you have to organize yourself to make sure that when a building is taken down, that you can also go and consider portions and fragments of a building like heritage. So it's mobile heritage, but it still is heritage. It's not because it's a fragment of a building. And I think there has been in heritage studies and in art history a kind of over-valuation of the integrity of an artistic creation. The building is a kind of a Frank Lloyd Wright-like organic whole, and if you take a portion of it, it's valueless. I think that is a big problem with the heritage sector, at least in Belgium, as we know it. So we try to make them discover that an industrial product can also be a piece of heritage. It's another kind of heritage, and there's no huge big name of a designer or an architect connected to it, but there's lots of intelligence and effort and sweat and blood and tears that can be involved as well. But so that to say that definitely from a cultural and an environmental point of view, it's better to leave buildings as they are and try to improve them. So that's definitely a thing. Now, about gentrification, I think it's very easy to throw that as a kind of reproach to designers and an architect that they may enhance gentrification. But when I was a student of architecture, the example that we were given of absolute utter success in designing was the Guggenheim in Bilbao, like the building that transformed the whole economy of the city, or at least that's the way it was presented to us. And that is definitely something you must try and achieve. And I think there's no problem with the project being successful. The only thing is what is the context of success. So if you look at a development where so imagine any urban embellishment project that is profit-driven in the 19th century or the 20th century, whereby a lot of money is invested in one park or one building, so that you could get a lot of profit from selling the properties that are looking onto that park or looking onto that magnificent building. That can be problematic, but if you just design a beautiful piece of urban landscape that is available to the inhabitants, or you design a beautiful bar that is open to the neighborhood, I think it's the responsibility also of the let's say the urban administration to make sure that there is no that the profit made on the rents or the selling of housing units around that area are kept under control. And so it's I think you should not confuse the success of a project with let's say negative profit making that can be marginal to it. So I because otherwise you're condemned to dismiss every successful architectural project in the sense that it will attract people that will like it, and it might even attract rich people. I know this. I mean, it's a huge debate, so let's not get sucked into it completely. But I think it's important to make a division here. And then if we take the example of a bar and a designer who wants to make a successful bar, you might have two attitudes. You might say, okay, I will, as the bar owner, you might appoint a very prestigious architect who will use his design skills, who will use lots of new materials and new forms, and it will be an extremely expensive project, but it might generate a successful bar. And you might take the same project of creating a bar, which is made only with using secondhand materials that have a lot of patina, character, soul into it, and that are making an equally successful interior space. Then I will probably prefer the second option for its cultural richness and also from an economic and environmental point of view. I think it's a better deal.
Great, thank you. Then there was the third question about the point of Alessandro, the non-professional. Maybe Curro, you.
Yeah. Okay. Just since I was taking this from the nuns, just to repeat this, they say most of the recipes we know have been created by non-professional chefs with an innovative spirit. I guess, yeah, I understand what you say, and I wouldn't miss maybe on one side we need skills, and actually in our realms we have a carpenter, a professional carpenter that helps us with the technical skills. But saying that, I guess the nuns, they are suggesting this space to recognize everybody possibility to participate in the action of doing something, and to recognize this space and to stimulate it, because eventually we know that all this issue of heritage and secondhand, it should be the whole of the society. Everybody should be pushing somehow on there. So I think it's in a way, I completely agree. We have to find where is the professional and the rigor and the technical knowledge and expertise, but also where are the spontaneity and the other views that, because has not this knowledge, can put also other elements. So, and also, of course, we like to push ourselves a little bit, in the sense that, yeah, it's nice to criticize a little bit the designers and the architects.
Thank you. And Miranda, I was thinking maybe you can add some comment about the originality. Is this a target?
Oh, wow. I don't know. I don't know what about being original. No, I think then, when you have a message to give, you just need to find the straight way to do it. So I don't know. Personally, I just things happen always after many digestion time. Many things never happen in one moment, because they got always personally. I need to have a chance to sleep with some of the ideas or some of the thoughts or some. So I mean, when you mean what you originality, you means about being original, or on an object that is original, or always a copy of a copy of a copy? What is your question? Perhaps I'm not answering exactly.
Yeah, I was talking about the, let's say, popular concept of originality, which doesn't mean authentic, but means something new, something never seen before. What I liked in the image I see of you is that on your back you have some texts written on the board. And when you were talking, I noticed that there is written mythologias, mythology, and ritual, which are linked to these conversations, the conversation we had, because any ritual is the reuse of something that has a value, that makes worth to repeat certain procedures and with the same materials. And mythology is something that, since the times of the analysis of Sigmund Freud, that goes in the same direction. I mean, is the re-elaboration of an idea in order to repropose it constantly. So I think that this understanding of the term, of the word originality, is also linked to these two words that I see written behind you.
Yes, completely. I mean, you know, if you want to read it better, but yes, I mean, yes. You know, I think this is there's a lot of connections and a lot of links on about this subjects, and we could talk long time. But personally, you know, since the very whatever long time, you know, I adore copies. You know, I have multiples. When I start to think that I was an artist, I start to do multiples. I use characters, and you can multiply with a machine. I mean, I like the idea that and those things finally become from a domestic or ritual, or from a situation, then connects people. But I mean, that's probably a straight connection to what you're saying about, you know, what ritual and or mythology works. But of course, I mean, you know, in what you're saying is probably more related about the importance of the object or of the ideas. I don't know exactly your question, what it goes through. So, what's exactly the question?
Great, thank you. And Gemma, it would be nice to. Yes.
Shower, or everybody in my neighborhood is watching the YouTube.
I can hear you. Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll do the same thing as Alessandro, but through images. For me, it's easy to communicate with them. So I'll introduce 3 topics to the debate, and I'll launch 4 questions for you. And I'll start sharing my screen if I am capable. So do you see it?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So I start with the first topic, and concerns attitude. Reuse has been the historical strategy for renewing, adapting, and regenerating cities until the disruption point that supposed the modern movement at the beginning of the 20th century, with the industrialization of construction techniques and materials. Buildings and materials were reused and adapted to the new requirements and sensibilities. It was possible because most buildings were conceived to be flexible structures, their materials had long-lasting performance, and there was a continuity of knowledge of construction techniques, skills, and craftsmanship. So the model was based on expertise and care of all agents involved. Attitude towards existing building was not unique. In fact, it moved from a worship one to a totally pragmatical approach, as we can see in the pictures. The first one on the left shows the remains of the columns of the Roman temple of Augustus inside a building that contains a lot of historical layers. The second one shows a Roman chapter as well, used as a raw material inside the wall, just as a piece of stone. So here comes my first question. How can we impulse contemporary attitudes toward what's already built, making them compatible in a conceptual and physical way? My second topic is, what about value? We've heard it before at the Lionel talk. The Rotor article in the IQD magazine, Mechanics of Rejuvenation, talks about value in 2 levels, value retention and value creation. The value retention can be considered as a cultural issue from my point of view, and regarding listening to the talk today, I think it's very clear. We can see in the first image the display in a temporary exhibition of a real fact that took place in 1957. During the renovation works in the Gaudí Casa Batlló that transformed the original house into an office building for an insurance company, a huge amount of doors and carpentries were literally dumped to the street. The former director of the Museums of Art of Catalonia, Joan Eno de las Artes, saw them as he drove by the Passeig de Gràcia, and he didn't stop until the city council took care of them. They finally entering the museum collection, so as valuable elements. I think it's hardly impossible that it could happen nowadays, part of our Gaudí work transformed into waste. But every day we can see a lot of construction elements dumped to the streets. I think Curro has made mention to the difficulties in the regulation to take profit of them. But these elements can be easily improved and reused, such as carpentries. The value creation is related to a creative process and concerns us as architects, designers, historians, archaeologists, and artists to impulse it. So, next question. How can we take the maximum benefit from this potential and avoid losing value? And the third one, and it's my final one, it's about strategy, a long term, of course. Reuse in a broad way can be considered as a good strategy to obtain a holistic approach to history, memory, and materiality, not just maintaining an inventory of elements, but establishing a system. The City Council of Amsterdam has presented its circular strategy 2020-2050 a few weeks ago. The pandemic lockdown was already on. Amsterdam wants to be a completely circular city by 2050 with an intermediate target of a 50% reduction in primary raw materials consumption by 2030. It's a good initiative from the economical, environmental, and social points of view. So the municipal authority is taking the lead, recognizing that this challenge can only be achieved if everyone plays their part. We can see some cases of interesting reuse examples right now with huge impact in general media, even as the Sala Beckett, where this debate had to take place. I hope Eva doesn't mind that I'm using this picture, but it was important for me to connect with the real scenario of this talk. Are they merely an anecdote, or will it have significant social, ecological, and research impact? And finally, is it possible to settle some kind of collaborative networking between cities in order to share good practices and to fight administrative and legal obstacles? So that's all from me.
Wow.
Thank you.
Great. What are questions? Maybe we are lucky to have Laia also with us today. You had some time for us. So what do you think, Laia? You can choose which one of these questions would you like to answer. You have to switch on the microphone. I cannot hear you yet still. Can you switch on the microphone on the bottom line of the tools should appear if you move the mouse. You see the microphone sign on? Now? Oh, but no, we cannot hear you.
Okay.
And now.
Can you listen to me? Yes? Yeah. Okay. I don't know. First of all, thank you for the invitation, Eva and Marc Aureli. And I don't know who can I'm gonna make answer for the last question that Gemma made. Obviously, is our in the council, in the government of the city, in the city council, we are working. We are working for make. Well, first of all, I'm working with Marc Aureli in the city council, and Marc Aureli is in the part of the patrimonial aspects, and I'm in the urban planning part, and we try to make that the city promote the reconstruction than the new construction. Okay, so I was looking for this plan from Amsterdam, and it's a very, very good proposed, and we are expect to make some of these kind of politics. it's difficult sometimes to make that the things that we wanted, some of architects, to make the decisions of the economical practice. And that's what happened when sometimes, and now in this position, in this time, in the post-COVID time, that we, I'm asking, I want to ask, answer in a question. That happened in Barcelona sometimes when we are talking with economics and economical constructions, say constructions, okay, sector, sometimes they always talk in a mantra way that the city is always finished, okay? And I hate this idea because the city is not finished. The city have a lot of practice to do because the city have to change, have to make a lot of changes for the users that we need, and it's a thing that it's only a reading of the economic market, but it's a mantra that there are no spaces to build, there are no way for the construction, because anybody of this sector of the economy think that the construction is a way to economy. So I wanted to change it, and I want to promote in the master plans that we promote to put this change, this conception that we have to promote the rehabilitation against the new construction. And I want to ask, because there are a lot of all of us said what are the best things, the reconstruction from the new construction, no? Because it's more respectful for the environment, for the local economy, and for the memory. And I want to ask for the Rotor team, what do you think about it's going to happen after this COVID situation? That the main issue is going to be the direction of the economy and the industry, and how we are going to convince that the way of the construction is not the new builds. Do you think that the industrialization of the rebuilding perhaps is the way, and is it possible?
Lionel, where are you?
I'm there. Sorry. You hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Laia, can you hear us? Yes, I think. Yes. Please go on.
Okay. So if I understand it well, the question is whether we can uncouple reconstruction as it's traditionally seen since 1945 from the economy. So that there could be a building economy that would be supportive of the general economy, that would be, let's say, unhinged from demolition, reconstruction, redevelopment, that kind of attitude, and that would be depending on the rehabilitation of existing buildings.
Yes, and if I understood, Laia concern also was this with this situation of COVID. If maybe afterwards there will be like a claim in favor of industry, that kind of rehabilitation will be kind of forgotten or given like a second importance. And if I understood, Laia, are you there?
Yeah. Well, but I think big industrial or the big economic sectors that are well organized, such as the building industry, they will do everything to use their powers to influence policy. So it's obviously a powerful lobby, and it's true that there might be reasons to be pessimistic for that. And I think we have to throw resistance against it, just like we have to resist airline being heavily subsidized to take their activity up again. So we know that there is something profoundly destructive about that type of building. So I think we have to limit the damage, and it's going to be really important to make the building industry understand that they are not necessarily dependent upon the cubic meter of concrete they're pouring annually to function, and so I think it's going to be a gradual effort, but I think that the COVID crisis could be a great opportunity as well to seize, because we will probably see a period in which the big investments are going to go down in big building investments, where the let's say the field is going to reshuffle in a way. It might be a good opportunity to try and push a series of positive evolutions that we see in a good direction. But I think municipalities play an extremely important role there as regulators of what's going to happen in the city.
Yes, because at the same time with your presentation, between you and Curro, it opens this field. We could see how much the work of people is much more relevant in the different activities that you are taking place, and if this is what we will need, probably direct salaries to people.
Absolutely, we tend to say that a deconstruction employs 7 times as many people as a traditional demolition, and people will say, okay, that's a disadvantage, but we say it's an asset, especially when you need employment, but then you have to facilitate it otherwise, so encourage the industry to go for it. But the good thing about it is it creates local employment. So this is employment that is impossible to send to overseas countries. It needs to happen in your cities. It can't happen anywhere else. So it would be a reason to be optimistic, but you have to be vigilant.
Good. Okay, who want to join? Alessandro? Have something to say? I know you had to leave. I think we have some questions from the audience. We have a question from Jelena, and it's about this. I would like to point out the social aspect of secondhand. So can we think about the transfer of memories when we embark in projects of rescue and renewal of spaces and materials? Who wants to answer this? Who had it?
No. Well, maybe I can try and give a short answer, but if nobody wants to, but I spoke already a lot, so maybe Curro.
Curro.
Thank you. Well, maybe I can link a little bit this comment, this question with the previous one about the values and the attitude. And I feel the challenge, one of the challenge we have is to recognize and to see all these elements from a different perspective. And at that point, it's to simplify probably too much, but it's one of these terms that sometimes appears, the upcycling, when a little transformation, it's able not just to make the valuable without losing, but to make the valuable even higher, so from something, whatever it is, to make a push and to put it higher. Even if and I think to me, you can look at in terms of materiality, function, or aesthetics, but also, as she was saying, the memory thing. And to do this transformation, to me, I think the 3 presentations has shown different strategies of upcycling, in the sense that all of them are taking things and pushing them to another state, adding something, or yeah, maybe the vocabulary is not great, but without afraid of this maybe is a negotiation, a dialogue. This memory, we know we need memory, it's important, but at the same time we know the dangers of memory, or the fact that cannot allow us to do certain movements. So I think from the three presentations, I like they were not afraid of too much of the memories. It was a memory somehow evident, and all of them, to me, they put it on light, but at the same time they transform and they make a step further to some other direction.
Good. Thank you, Curro. And Alessandro, would you like to add something? I know you. That we cannot hear you.
First of all, I'm sorry that I have to leave. And therefore, I say bye to everybody now. And I thank everybody of the participants, first of all, from the organization that invited me. I just want to add as a closing contribution on my side that I consider, as Laia mentioned and also Lionel made in its intervention, that the municipalities, they absolutely can have a lot of things to say and a big role in handling this new scenario that we've described today. The possibilities are huge, are vast. As everything new, there is also space, cracks where some undesired side effect can enter. And I think that the municipality regulations that normally are very effective in construction should be the let's say the main tool in order to get the best from these new possibilities that the second-hand attitude opens in our cities. So thanks again. And I am so interested in this topic and enthusiastic from this invitation. I think I will see it again on YouTube, because I think it will be online for a while.
Thank you very much, Alessandro.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Having you. Bye. Great. So we would just, I would like, Gemma, would you like to add something else?
No, I just, I don't know who showed the image. I don't know if it was Curro, it was Lionel, about a lot of furniture dumped in the streets, like making a huge mountain. Maybe it was Curro.
It was Curro, yeah.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this thing about not losing value, or make a push to win value in every step. And it shocked me, the image, because what we are doing right now is from a thing that has a certain quality, material quality, we are reducing its value. So I think we have to change completely our point of view and our perspective about how to reduce materials, not losing in such a, I don't know how to say it, or how qualify it, insanity way. We have to lose everything. I don't know. I think it's so totally nonsense.
Yeah, thank you. I know Lionel has to go. So Lionel, would you like to answer Gemma?
Well, it's okay. I thought it was urgent, but I have a bit more time than that, so I can stay a bit longer. Yeah, well, I totally agree with the let's say the value destruction that you're referring to, and for me it's there has been something as an organized value destruction of things, and for me the recycling industry is much of that. With Rotor, we've always been pretty skeptical about the notion of recycling, because we saw how it happened here. You have to well, realized that in many cases, and it's probably not the case for the recycling of metals, for instance, but for many other materials, recycling is always downcycling. It's extremely rare that you get a high-grade material that can be reinjected in a production process that is coming from recycling. So when you recycle plastics, you need to be sure that you only have polypropylene and that you don't have any polystyrene mixed to it, or no pure. So it's virtually impossible to make it so pure that you can reintroduce it in a production process. So we've been studying industrial production processes in our beginning years, and we realized that I mean, if you the production of plastic bottles, for instance, if you try to use recycled PET to produce plastic bottles, you have a risk of explosion at every minute in your production machine. So it's a blow molding machine, and if you have one impurity in your molten plastic that enters the blow molding machine, then it stops, and the whole production is arrested for at least 1 hour, the time that they take the rubbish out of it, etc. So they just don't do it. It's too much complicated. So I'm highly skeptical of many recycling processes, but I think we have to push for them. But certainly for the mineral waste, the way it's happening now for the moment, it's just a way of, it's not a way of switching products. It's a way of being able to tear down other buildings and to replace them with new ones. So it's something that has to be rethought seriously, but it's going to take a lot of efforts because the sector is so well established now, certainly in a country like ours.
Great. Thank you. Well, I think it's almost time. I asked the four guests that talk at the beginning to think of a question that you will pose to the other three. If one of you, the question has not been talking yet, maybe Miranda, you have thought of, had some question prepared?
Yeah, I was thinking more, David, I mean, the archive concept of David, how, I mean, it's you too, I mean, Lionel, you too, I mean, you work in, you're doing a large archive, you're keeping all those materials and after removing those. And so, I don't know, this idea of archive, I don't know how, how you deal with, but especially the question was for David because I guess he has more kilometers of film keeping his own files. I would be curious to know what you think about, I mean, how you do with that, how you deal with.
Okay, thank you. Well, for me, I see the whole thing as a puzzle. You know, when you play a puzzle, you buy a box full of pieces and you already know the image because the image is on the top of the box. Mm-hmm. From my point of view, and I think that this is something related also with your work, but maybe with the work of Curro and Lionel, the image is not on the box and the pieces are everywhere. You only have to find them and try to recombine them in the picture that you want to put on your box at the end of the process. So for this reason, when I say that I like to watch a huge amount of movies every day and collect clips without thinking about a possible project to be done, is because something is revealed only by the way that you are looking at something. You find something interesting and then you find another piece, you put them all together and just the juxtaposition of the two elements produce meaning. And I think that this is related with art in a general way, but I think this could be part of the process from the architectural way of designing, of looking at things. I think when I saw the two images that Gemma showed before about the attitude and the value, the doors and the other the elements, the columns, they were pieces of a puzzle. And for me, there are many different ways to combine them, and maybe to combine them in a good way.
And Davide, did you have a question? What was your question addressed to?
Well, not actually. Well, I had a question for at the beginning for Miralda, because when I read the text on the magazine, I was very interested in the process. The text was describing him spending a night inside the restaurant and progressively discovering the different things, wall behind another wall, then behind another wall. I only would like Miranda to say something about this more, because I mean, my own way to find out things is to watch movies, something very safe, because I'm in my office or at home, and I only have to watch a movie and use a software that can. But in that situation, you had to use your body, your hands. So it wasn't safe at all. It was something that can hurt. So if you can explain a little bit, about it.
Yeah, well, you're lucky. I love to watch films too, but I need to, I really need to get more involved sometimes. I think it's a question of time, a lot of time. Time means, sometimes you scratch papers, a lot of scratching papers and making whatever sketches, or you call drawings or whatever. But most of the time it's part of the experience, and the experience to feeling the things, and at the very end is like a palimpsest. The things are just one behind the other one, and you. But of course, you need to make a hole, or you need to unwrap a carpet, or you need to. You need some action. But more is I would say more a concept idea of really see how what else, what I feel, but what this brings to the other thing, this extension, this continuation, like the cadaver exquisite, this idea of falling things, and everything regenerates, and everything, it's a little bit what we've been talking today, things have this kind of life and energy. But yes, I would say this is a lot of about consuming time. Time means probably, I don't know, pills or coffee or brain, or I don't know. It's like if it's answer enough for you that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I would like to ask Curro, what was your question for whom?
Yeah, actually, wow, this is a difficult, because I have questions for everybody. But if I have to choose one that maybe it's more far away from what it's been in discussion, perhaps to Lionel, I will ask a kind of a bit marketing question, in the sense that the clients you have, how far do you feel they valorate the pure environmental action of what it means to take a decision and to use one of your elements? How far do you feel in their decisions this component is taken in consideration? That because are dealing with the stuff that you are working with, there is consequences on the environmental in relation to a pure new element that they incorporate in the building.
Thank you, Curro, for your question. It's difficult to say. It's impossible to give one answer to cover all situations, but I might give an answer talking about a project that I showed of the social housing company. So that is definitely a commissioner. So let's say the two directors that came to us and invited us to do the design, they were driven by the traditional company values, let's say, which are upholding sustainability very much. And so they were absolutely convinced. They were total diehards, and I mean, they were completely on board for, let's say, the project that we put on the table. Now, that was maybe less the case for the employees of the company, and which are not necessarily, they haven't signed a contract saying that they would adhere to all the sustainability issues. And of course, the functionality of the design was far more important for them, feeling safe in their workplace, which is, especially when you have to deal with the customers, is not always easy. And then there is that question of feeling well taken care of. As an employee, you want your environment to be like a gift. And I realize that is often a challenge with sustainable design or reuse design, in the sense that sometimes people will understand something that is explicitly secondhand as, let's say, condescending, if you see what I mean. So it's as if, as an employee, you're not worth a new office table, or a new desk, a new computer, a new chair. And you have to be extremely sensitive with that issue. And I think that's the social dimension of reuse as well, as it came up in the discussion. And I'm glad to talk about it with you, because it's obviously something you are dealing with as well. But it's as if you're as in a karate move, you're turning that challenge into an asset. I have the impression in your own work, in the sense that your customers are often participating in the production of the pieces, or that's the way I understand it. And I think in your work, I see a lot of, let's say, almost revolutionary potential, in the sense that there's really that emancipatory dimension, that you're making something that, as you say, it's brutalist, it's rough, and it's disruptive of traditional design. It really has that quality in it. And we love to make pieces like that sometimes as well, but we know that in other circumstances, like the one I described, we just cannot afford it, because people would take it aggressive. I mean, as an act of aggression. But I think the social dimension of how people are reading these objects is a heavily underestimated dimension of the topic of reuse.
Great. So did you have a question for Curro prepared?
Yes. Well, my question was a very simple one. I was wondering, do you know the book Ad Hocism by Charles Jenks? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you agree with his description of what ad hocism is, and would you feel like belonging to that category in your work, or not exactly?
Actually, I really, the way you was commenting just now, how you perceive the pieces we are doing, somehow it made me feel that now connecting with Adhocism, how is an attitude, it mixes an intention of, you mentioned this word, disruptive, and it's a mixing of to be deliberately uncomfortable, in the sense that, it's sometimes maybe it's on the limit, and the perception of that piece maybe not apparently as friendly. I guess the Frankenstein reference, or of course all the, in a way, Adhocism all the work from the communities that they are forced to live in really extreme conditions. And it seems like at certain point, they are not caring of certain aesthetics elements in the way supposedly someone in society does, in the sense that there is a urgency to solve something. So it seems like certain aspects of elements, of the appearance of elements, they're less urgent. But at the same time, you know, if you ever have got a chance to go, like, to visit a favela, for instance, in Brazil, and there is a proud of being able to build your own house, and even if the elements doesn't fix as good as like design magazines, but there is a strong connection to be able to do something. And I guess it's, yeah, to me, there is a lot of uncertainties on there, and I'm not sure, and if sometimes this is a barrier, this is a wall to be accepted, these elements for many parts of the society, or they see as a bit extreme or out of the certain normality. But yeah, I guess it's the eventually the curiosity that moves you to explore that. Without, for sure, I don't have I have a lot of I don't know. I mean, there is still a lot of elements that questions to me, and I'm not sure the path to do it. But the capacity of maybe also this term amateur, you know, the one that does something because it loves to do it, and even if technically it's limited, but it compensates on other aspects, and that rafty thing that kind of a more or less, apparently less less orthodox way of doing things. It's in itself is a way of questioning also the reality we have, and this supposed to normality that we have to go to.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Good. Well, thank you all. I think I could stay longer listening to all your comments. That's great. I'm very pleased. We have to close down. I think I lit the poster I had behind. It has been really a pleasure listening to you. I think it is, and I'm very happy also that you have presented your project, very creative, very attractive ways of dealing with these second-hand pieces. And on the other side, we have 4 of you, and then 4 architects that are related to this new revision of the Heritage Plan of Barcelona. So I think we'll collect all this information, and all this debate will be collected in an active way. So, and I will like to thank you, all of you, the people who were listening, say again, hello, goodbye. And thanks also to Marc Aureli to organize this session, to have this idea of putting this kind of a fragment of this magazine into this online format. And Marc Aureli, if you want to say something, to say goodbye to everyone.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much to everybody. One information, I was talking with the organization in the public vision of this journey. In the beginning, it was a problem. We are going to make some kind of edition of all of the process. It's going to be able to look for everybody. I have enjoyed very much about all of you, really. I knew because of my conversation with Eva and with the thing I was reading. It's very nice. I know Miralda for some years ago, and the project you has been explaining is very fantastic. And this idea of to play with the objects and to have a new life the object is very interesting. It's very interesting also the conference of Davide and this idea of to play also to enjoy with the copies and to make new things with the copies is very interesting. Well, very interesting about Lionel, because you don't know what in Barcelona we have a lot of interest on this kind of project, because we are worried about a lot of material we have. And we have and even we are collecting, we have to reuse. It's very interesting, and also with very many thanks to Curro Claret. I know your project for some years ago. I have been talking about this because of this vinculation with the social way of do the things is very nice. Well, thank you very much. I think we are going to. Well, we have a lot of job, as I said in the beginning, and but I think this second-hand way of thinking is very useful and very. I think it's nobody can forget that in this time is. I think it's obligatory to reuse that, to think about how Curro said, follow with something who came and we use and we leave to the next generation, more or less. I think in a moment you were talking about this, it was very interesting. Well, nothing else, because I suppose it's very late now, and everybody is very tired. And thank you also, Laia, for the because I know she is very worried about all of the things we have to do now. We have a lot of job, but it's very nice to work with her, and in this I think it's going to be interesting to do our future. Okay, thank you very much to everybody. And Eva, you close the, okay?
Yes, I think that you close it. Thank you again. I really enjoy it. Thank you for the great presentation and for everyone to be here to participate. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Eva. Bye, Aureli.
Everybody.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye, Gemma.
Thank
Ciao.
you.